May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect. Today's message, Aman. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi, ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Hosayana Kitabuya, Ohio. Hasi, Manut, Wagwan, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Honson, Privet, Habarigani, Akwaba, Madase, Intesen, Shambu, Mimini Kofi, in the Franco Katan the Wewe, Boker Tov, Boker Tav, greetings, grand rising, salutations, Bakwartav, Barakala Sumikava, and Aik of Aik, Hilt, and servants of Christ, Mashalam Chi, Shalom, to everybody. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, and being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Thank you for being on with us. We very much so appreciate you and are grateful to have you on with us. We once again give all honor and praise to the Most High. I give all praise and honor to them for my wife, the Honorable the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that is able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. To the ministers, staff, moderators, SOC, Lottie Dine, everybody, part of the regions around the world. To those who are joining us for the first time, long time, one time of many, one and only time, whatever the case might be, we appreciate your presence. We're thankful and grateful to have you all on. Thank you for joining us again, and we're excited to have you. Some real quick announcements. We are going to have later tonight, our schedule goes as follows. There will be the we'll have our live session, our Q&A session today, obviously. Then later on, we will have the women's meeting at women's meeting at 7 p.m. New York time later this evening. We will have our live session at 7:30 p.m. New York time later this evening, and then at 9 or it's Friday. All right, so we're gonna do this different. I'm sorry for today for Friday. 7 p.m. New York time, women's meeting. 8 p.m. New York time, live session, because women's meeting. So 7 p.m. New York time, women's meeting. 8 p.m. New York time, live session. And then 9 p.m. New York time, we'll have our sovereignty class for those that are doing SOC University. So we thank you guys for that, and we appreciate you all. Calendars are being set up. They're going to start to be sent out. I'm not sure if tomorrow or Monday, but one of the two. So those of you who have been doing the calendar stuff or sent your donations for the physical calendar, you should be able to start receiving those prayerfully, at the beginning of next week. And outside of that, let's just keep on pushing. Be ready, brothers. We have our men's meeting tomorrow, 7 p.m. New York time. And we will have our watch party tomorrow, where we'll continue with Reclaiming the Throne at 12:15 p.m. New York time, amongst our other stuff we have. So prayerfully you can join us. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let us know. Let us not forget that February 14th and February 28th, for those of you who are in the DMV in Baltimore, we're going to try and see if we can find a spot somewhere, more than likely in Laurel, Maryland, to see if we can meet up. So if you're the DMV or in Baltimore, if you're somewhere close enough where you feel like you'd like to join us, we're going to try on February 14th at some point. Probably have to be probably going to have to be somewhere like around 4 p.m. New York time or so. We're going to try to meet up in Laurel. So if you're able to meet up with us there, we greatly appreciate you. We'll try to have an address sent out to you guys, who we have your information to send it to. And hopefully you guys will be available for that. Also, February 28th, we're going to try and do the same, but do it maybe further down in Virginia somewhere, still Northern Virginia, the DMV area. So we're going to try and meet up those two times. So if you're able to meet up with us, we'd love to have you. Also February 20th, in the midst of that, we're going to get ready to start removing the leaven from our home, leading all the way up to Passover on April the 1st. So you're more than welcome to join us for all those things that are going to happen as well. Outside of that, we thank you, we honor you, we appreciate you. We're going to get ready to say our Bible pledge. So if you're able to rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, or however you're able to reverence the word of Yah, we thank you for doing so in advance. And we're going to get ready to say our Bible pledge and jump into Q&A. We already got our first question, one that was left over from yesterday about marriage. So I'm excited about that. Y'all know we love to talk about marriage here. So we're going to jump right into that question. And any other questions, comments, or concerns that you guys have for today, of course, feel free to let them be heard. Just know that when we do speak on these questions and things of that nature, we have Q&A, we try to respect everybody, respect your position, respect your culture, respect your mindset, respect where you're coming from. We're going to ask for the same thing back. We do come through we do look through a particular prism and culture and mindset and belief and biblical belief, right? So we do want to make it very clear that we would like to ensure that we will be as respectful as possible towards you. We will be as respectful as possible towards you and towards your belief system. And we'll try to make sure that we are treating you with respect. If not, we do have moderators. If you are not able to do so, we do have moderators. And the moderators really run the show when it comes to a lot of these things, even including trying to make sure that we stay on track with questions. So we're going to ask you to be respectful. They're going to be respectful to community. They're here to protect the community, protect the virtual space, and also to respect myself, to protect myself if I get out of, if there's a possibility that I might get out of sorts, or I might kind of get off of what we're doing in the Q&A. So we just want to make that clear. That being said, Tadah, once again, we're going to get ready to get started. Once again, if you are able to, if you can rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, or however you are able to reverence the word, we ask that you get ready to do so with us as we get ready to go into our Bible pledge and jump right in. You can put your right hand in the air. You can put your device in the air. If you'd like to put your Bible in the air and get ready to repeat after me. Right before we do that, though, let's go ahead and say shalom to everybody on all the different platforms. Thank you so much for being on with us, everybody. How you doing? Cultural Prospect, Beck, Keith, Cole, Quotation, Beth, Akut Debarach, Valerie, Rodney, Raymond, and anybody that I'm missing, charge to my head, down to my heart. We appreciate you. Sister Deborah, excuse me. I just saw Sister Deborah on there. And thank you for any reposts, sharing the lives. Thank you for liking, subscriptions, and notification tabs. If you guys do give donations that help us to do what we do around the world, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us, and prayerfully this helps you out in your journey as far as just life in general, and of course doing so through the prism of the word of Yah. How you doing, Empress? And so if I miss anybody, once again, charge to my head, not to my heart. We very much so appreciate you all, and thank you so much. And thank you, hashtag SOC University family. We've been doing well so far. We're going to continue to push and move and to grow in what the Most High has for us. Amen. All righty. So we'll go ahead and get ready to get started. We'll say our Bible pledge and jump right in. Amen. I love it. Doing lemon and lime to start the day. Nothing like it. Nothing like it. Lemon lime. If you get a chance to put a little bit of salt in that bad boy. Nothing like it. All right. I think I have I'm missing one thing, but I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. My apologies. Okay, well, we'll take care of it later. It's fine. It's fine. All praises. All right. Let us go ahead and get started. You can put your Bible or your device or your right hand in the air and just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. And Shem Yechavach. Aman. Which in Yechavach Shem, his name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High. Yechavach Alachem. Aman. So today is Q&A day. Second of two. We do every other Thursday and Friday. We try to make it a point to allow everybody to come on and ask questions, give questions, comments, or concerns. I will try to be better, with our timing today. We'll try, hopefully, a little bit before 10 a.m. New York time today to make sure that we open it up on Clapper. We did open it up, but nobody called in, but you can call in through, today we're going to try through WhatsApp. We're going to try to go through the WhatsApp thing if you'd like to make a call. You have to have there's two, I can't say phone numbers on here or whatever, and I shouldn't anyways, but there's 202 numbers that we have. If you're watching on certain platforms now, it should be in the description in the live session. You want the 202 2028 number, not the 2025 number, but the 2028 number. Okay, and if you do that through WhatsApp, you should be able to find me, and you should be able to call in. So we'll try to open that up a little bit later for persons. We'll try to see if that works. If you have a question, comment, or concern through there, if we don't get any questions, comments, or concerns coming through there after about opening up for 30 minutes, then we'll open it up on Clapper and see if anybody would like to ask questions through there. So we'll try to have that on with us, and we'll try to start that at like I said, somewhere around 10 a.m. New York time, or whatever the case might be. So it is Q&A day. I'm going to start with a question that we had left over from yesterday. So if somebody would like to, but you can feel free to ask a question or even questions about what I'm talking about in that time. Today is Q&A day. I will try my best to answer as many questions as possible. How you doing, Legend Lee? Thanks for being part of the community. So once again, and how you doing today? How you doing, Brother Alton? Okay. Is that all you got, Scott? All right, cool. We'll go ahead and if that's the best you got or the only thing you got, I guess. All right, cool. So today, so I guess the person's thing was they looked at me, they looked at what I look like, and and they were like, "Oh, I guess I'm not going to do it." And they made sure they said a curse word and left, as if that means anything. But all right. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate you. So we're going to go ahead and get started with what the Most High has for us for today. So the question that was asked from yesterday, we didn't get a chance to go into, and I told them, probably need 30 minutes to an hour to really address it properly. Is a question about marriage. All right, marriage, and how should we look at things biblically concerning marriage, right? What is the cultural context? What are these things supposed to be in marriage? Which is a great question, because we live in a society today that's really anti-Christ. We live in a society today where persons meet up on Sundays, Saturdays, whatever your day of worship is, in some of these organizations, in some of these churches, and they're speaking on things outside the prism, outside the lens of what's actually righteous. So if we're going to be in righteousness, which means right lawful standing or right legal standing, we should make sure that we actually give credit to the thought process of the ones who were led by the Most High to write out these things concerning marriage. So when we say marriage, we have a saying here at SOC, and we start off like this: sex is marriage, and marriage is sex. Sounds weird to some, and I'm not saying marriage only means when you're having sex. But sex is marriage, marriage is sex. When I say that, it is because in our culture, right, one does not have sex until they're married, right? And also in our culture, to canal or know somebody, it means, and even with the modern word, right, or even if we look at some of the etymology of more modern times, to know something, K-N-O-W, is to be intimate with something to the point of identifying it. How you doing, Sister Shirley? Right? Drewski exposed religion. Drewski exposed was been exposed. He didn't expose religion. He exposed fake preachers who are out here taking your money and doing stuff like that, right? But if you'd like to be on here and listen and not give me a dime and at least give me an opportunity to say what I'm saying, feel free to do so. I actually think that what Drewski did was not only funny, I think that it told the truth. See, I'm not a Christian, so, right? So even some of the stuff you're telling me or putting in there or whatever, you're talking about somebody else and how they do. Now, if you'd like to listen, feel free. If not, we just go ahead and get you up out of here. I don't understand why you're even listening in. If your whole thing is, I hate it anyway. Something in you either wants to hear what I have to say or you're just trying to troll. Either way, what you're doing is pointless. So feel free to stick around if you'd like, or if not, the moderators and myself will probably deal with you soon. Right? How you doing, Dark Desires? That being said, right, back to the point of the exercise, right? If you're going to talk about actual marriage, not by what the churches are teaching, and not by what you probably think, but through the prism of those who actually wrote what you call the Bible before it was changed into English, before it was changed into Latin, before it was changed into Greek, before persons of other ilk and other thought process and mindset had a thought. We're trying to tell you and I what this stuff is. What does marriage actually mean for the persons who wrote this? Now, for those of us who live by this, right, and are decades in, right, in the decade club plus, and are trying to make sure that we teach persons properly and make sure that we're not being misogynistic or misandrist, right? And how you doing, D? How you doing, sister? Right, sister D? We're going to go ahead and answer this properly, the way it comes through in our culture, in our context, right? And really the context of the Most High, for his ways and not our ways, nor his thoughts are our thoughts. As high as the heavens are his ways from our ways and his thoughts from our thoughts. And so maybe you're not on that level yet to comprehend. So maybe you want to hear what somebody actually means through the prism that they come through. So that being said, once again, we're talking about marriage. And for us, sex is marriage, marriage is sex. This does not mean that marriage only is when you have sex. But this is because sex is only set aside for those who are married. And marriage, in our culture, is only set aside for those who have sex. And by the way, this is not just only through the prism of those who are Avda or Yachad Sha'al, but this is through the prism of those of many cultures. Many cultures believe this. Many Americans believe this, believe it or not. And many men who are even in the red pill stuff are men who never had sex before. And many sisters who are in the is it sparkle or sprinkle? I don't know what it is stuff, but they themselves actually have not had sex as well. Many, believe it or not. Right? And how you doing, Ja Satsanga? Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Thank you for being part of the community. So we have a problem where many persons are talking about relationships and not talking about it through a proper prism. How you doing, Elder Tamara? Right? The channel is about making sure that we change lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We come through a particular prism. Today's Q&As, and I'm dealing with a question. If you'd like to be able to listen in, you'll probably be able to get the tenor of what we talk about and what we need. Right? But thank you for being on. So, in all these things, and thank you to everybody on all the different platforms. We appreciate you. So, in speaking on what we're speaking about today, we want to recognize the person's question from yesterday, which I'm trying to get to about marriage. So in our culture, there's no such thing as dating, right? Somebody said, well, the question's about marriage. Yeah, but marriage is affected, and many persons' mindset is warped on marriage because, especially in the West, but in many places now that are being affected by the same Western thought process, theology, philosophy, etc., there is no such thing as dating in the Bible. And how you doing, Hector? Thanks for being part of the community. Training your granddaughter, 18 years old, to be a wife, not a girlfriend. That's right. That's right. And that's correct. See, dating is something that is foreign to those who actually are in the kingdom. You said, what about spiritual marriage? Well, yeah, so we're married to the Most High, right, in the spirit, or even talking about something as far as context and trying to get us to comprehend what our relationship would be like with Christ, or what our relationship would be like with the Father, right? Even in Jeremiah, it tells us that Israel is the wife of the Most High. We see Israel is shown as the wife in Genesis 3 and Revelation 12, that Israel will give birth to the son in Isaiah chapter 9, right? We see that we should love our wives as Christ loves the assembly and gave himself for it, and that we as wives should be submitted to the mission of our husbands in Ephesians chapter 5. So yeah, so all those things are true, right? But as far as even when we're talking about marriage in for man and woman, we're going to start just with the place of some of the things that we go through in society today. So, and how you doing, Josie? Welcome back. Thanks for being part of the community, and thank you for the love. Right? So, in our culture, there's no such thing as dating. And this is something that is foreign because a lot of places, even in, I've been, and I stand corrected, I've been corrected before, not all churches do this, but there are many. No, let me name you a but. Not all churches do this. However, there are many churches that make it a point to speak on, even through their singles ministry, to speak on how to date. And this is not correct. How you doing, Missy Tina Turner? So this is not a correct mindset or a state to think of, especially if you're talking about biblically. Because your Bible never has two persons going on a date. There is no such thing as premarital sex. Right? So any premarital sex or any dating is out of order, biblically speaking. And shalom, Sister Shirley, if I didn't say so already. right? Any, I'm gonna say that again. Any, what did I say? Any premarital sex, any dating is out of order. We start there, by the way, because there are those who would say, well, okay, dating and marriage are different. But if you have a dating mentality, a lot of persons take that dated mentality, right, and they bring it into relationships, including marriages. How you doing, brother Yachasa? And so, and how you doing, Sister Carla? So even the way we frame our right, even the framework of marriage is based upon dating. Matter of fact, what if you recall when you were growing up? Now I noticed I'm using different, you know, generations and toys and what was important and this and that or whatever. I'm not sure because I'm not really in the toy game like that. At least for the little ones, especially for little girls, it's been a long time, right? That being said, my children are grown or youngest is 10, right? So I'm past like the little toys and stuff like that. But I recall growing up, and you have the games that we played. We had toys that we played with, right? And if we be honest about those things, and thank you for the love, little girls grew up playing with Barbie, right? And little boys grew up playing, with other things with toys, and usually we play games, like we're into sports and our games had rules and regulations and stuff like that. And little girls grew up with Barbies. And we had this stuff shaped that when we were even growing up, the toys were designed to get you, the toys come out of the society or the community that you partake in, right? So little girls grew up with Barbie and Ken, right? This is a dating mentality. As a child, your parents weren't teaching you. They weren't telling you this is what husbands do, this is what wives do, right? Parents were sending you to school. You weren't your father's apprentice or your mother's apprentice. You weren't learning directly from them. Nobody was telling you after you saw a big argument that came out, hey, you know what? Our apologies. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what this is where your father messed up. Hey, son, you shouldn't have seen me. Even if I didn't yell, you shouldn't have heard me speaking. Even if it's something you think is innocent, is not innocent. You should make sure that your wife is treated that up. We didn't have persons teaching us marriage, right? We didn't have persons teaching us marriage. Yeah, nobody said you're dumb. I'm not dumb either, right? So, so welcome though. Appreciate you. Nobody telling you this because you're dumb or because I'm dumb, right? Dumb means that I'm not able to speak. So obviously that's not the case either, right? And that's not the case for you either, right? You're typing very well. So when we speak on these things and we speak about marriage, we come from a different perspective. So for example, have you ever noticed with Barbie and Ken that Ken is supposed to be somebody who's an accessory, right? Have you ever noticed that Ken is an accessory? There's Barbie, there's Barbie's friends, there's Barbie's house, there's Barbie's car, there's Barbie's clothes, there's Barbie's brush, there's Barbie's dog, right? There's Barbie's whatever, but then there's Barbie's Ken. And if you're the little girl playing with Barbie and Ken, some of you might even recall this, but there's many little girls that have been studied doing this to where they treat Barbie and Ken like boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife. And they start having these conversations, or they'll even do things and they'll start having conversations. If you ever think about or look into those conversations, they get really interesting, right? That they're having in their head and what they think they're supposed to be able to be doing and saying. But also, one of the things that happens too, if you pay attention, is that a lot of times Ken knows the mind of Barbie. I'm gonna say that again. Ken knows the mind of Barbie. You ever thought about that? Because you're the person that controls both. Ken should know, right, the mind of Barbie. Well, Donna, you're gonna have to sit in and plug in, or we're just gonna have, you can go ahead. Well, I'm gonna leave it alone, right? This might not just be for you on this one today. Thank you for being on though. How you doing, Minister Raj? So Ken has the mind of Barbie. So if Barbie says I'm going to the store, Ken's just going to the store. He's an accessory. If Barbie says the house is gonna look like this, Ken's just gonna go along with it. But then you get to be older and nobody's trained you that Ken is supposed to be somebody who has a mind. Ken is supposed to speak. Ken might say, "Oh, I don't do that." Ken might say, "I don't wear matching outfits like that." I'm not saying you can't wear matching outfits, but you get what I'm saying. Like Ken might have a mind to say something. Ken might not be a perfect accessory, right? Ken might have some problems. You know what I'm saying? Ken, but Ken also biblically is supposed to be a leader, right? Ken is supposed to make decisions. Ken is supposed to lead in Bible study and what true worship is, and to be submitted to the mission more than his wife would be. Ken is supposed to be somebody that was trained by his father, right? There are things that pop up, right? But we've been trained by society from young, I'm about to go and say a Star Wars thing, from younglings, from from birth, from being young persons, from being little babies. We're supposed to make sure that we have certain things. Hey, how you doing, Auntie Marion? And thank you for all that you do as always, right? Ken is different in real life than he was. I don't care if Ken has dark skin or so-called palm colored skin. Ken is not what you thought he was. Ken might not always be muscular because he can eat whatever you want him to eat and he doesn't change. Ken might get sick from time to time, right? On the flip side, we as men are raised and we play with toys, and usually any toys that are girls are toys that are supposed to be a lot like tomboys, or while having bodies that are sexy, right? Wow, right? Just keeping it a buck, right? I know we want to act like this didn't happen, but if you go back and watch He-Man. They're coming out with a He-Man movie now. They're gonna change some stuff up. But go back in the 80s and watch He-Man, right? Go back in the 80s and watch Thunder, Thundercats. Ho, right? Go back and watch that and look at how the women are dressed. Go watch He-Man's sister, She-Ra, and what she was dressed like. Go look at what the G.I. Joe women are dressed like, right? Go to the 90s and look at Mortal Kombat, right? What is Shiva supposed to look like, right? What is, even if you don't like her face, right? What is Melina supposed to look like? What does Jade look like? They all look pretty much the same, by the way, too. But look at their bodies. Look at what happens. Look at the breasts, and how, as video games have moved, these things get more swaying and more this and that. What's the other one? Tekken. Go look at Tekken. Even Tekken volleyball games, right? They raised a society of hypersexualized and individuals who are look even at the effect of Barbie, right? What little boys thought about Barbie and her body, and what little girls thought looking at their body, and how a lot of women now are trying to fix their bodies to look like Barbies. And how you doing, Yehuda? Thanks for being Yehuda. Thanks for being on, right? These are things that are there. So all these different things have been supplied to you that have affected the mind of Yah's creation. We don't have the mind of our creator. We have the mind of persons who come against the creator's will. We were raised and trained as little babies thinking this, right? And little boys, therefore, don't want girls who talk a lot, because girls don't really talk like that in the things we watched or the toy we played with, right? Girls followed the lead of the boys and did what the boys did, and you were supposed to be there just as a girl, and so you grow up later on as a man, and you replace that with just be there with, okay, just cook, clean, have sex, shut up, and even if you have a job, work, and you still need to do all the stuff, shut up. I'm not worried about all that stuff. We're not supposed to have connection. We're supposed to just simply be in the same space. This shows itself really ugly when you get 2020 and you get C19, right? Around the time everybody's focused on having to get that jab and all that, you get C19, and you start realizing all these couples start coming up with videos and start saying, yeah, I can't stand being around my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my spouse. I can't stand being around my children, because you weren't trained for that, but you're supposed to be trained for marriage, once again, from birth. You said your surname's Thundercat, you Flintstones. Okay, even with the Flintstones, go back to the Flintstones. Even look at how men are represented in that. Right? Strong, but stupid. But even being strong and stupid should still have a home, this and that. You should have Wilma. Wilma should be fine, and this and that. A lot of people grew up with crushes on, Betty and little boys back in the day who were looking at Betty and all those different things or whatever. There's a certain way that it's supposed to be presented. Right, bam, bam, little boy, strong, Pebbles supposed to be like this, cute and all, right? We're raised with certain things. What our thought process is family. If you want to even go to that same place, look at the Andy Griffith show, or look at the the Brady's, the Brady Bunch. You know, look at whatever her name was, the witch, right? And twinkle her nose. These are things that we were raised in. How you doing, Sister Jennifer? Not just raised by, but raised in because our families tried to emulate it. Even though it was a comedy. Look at I Love Lucy show, right? And different things and how you're supposed to see these things happen or whatever, right? There's a constant and consistent theme that goes on, and we grew up believing not only in that, but now we also put it together with dating. And dating is dated. If I were to go and tell you, if you were to go to the store and I were to tell you to go get some milk, if I were to tell you to go get some eggs, if I were to tell you to go and get food product, there's supposed to be a sell by date, an expiration date, etc. Right? When you look at the date, what's the point of looking at the date? Right, beloved? If you go somewhere and you're looking for a date, how you doing, Brother Dwayne? Grand rising to you, bro. Right, praying for you still. Right, if you go to the store and you look for a date, what are you looking for? If something is dated, and I'm looking for a date on it, what am I looking for? How you doing, Brother James? If I'm looking for a date on something I'm going to eat, what am I looking for? I want you to catch it. See, these are words that we use. Words mean words. That's right. We're looking for expiration or how long it will last, or basically how long I have it up until. Okay. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Let's use that. How long I have it up until. That's what I'm looking for. So if I go looking for a date, all I'm expecting is I need to use it. I need to use it for my benefit. I need to shape it into whatever I need it to be to serve me. And I need to do so by a certain date. So when you go on your first date might be your only date. Maybe you come with the mindset of you want multiple dates, but let's be honest. But for most of us, we're coming with the mindset of we're looking for a first date. Is really the possibility of the only date. And so even it gets to a place to where now, well, what about one night stands? Well, for some persons, this might be the only time. Hey, you only live once. You see all these things, they start creeping in because you have a date. Now, maybe you get to the second date. Maybe you get to the third and fourth date. Maybe you keep dating long enough and then you start saying, well, we've been together a long time. Maybe I should start thinking about having a long life. But this is out of order. If we're talking about having a mindset of marriage, I shouldn't be even doing anything from kissing to holding hands to doing whatever with anybody, right? Unless we're thinking about long term. See, we have an expiration date mentality in society. You said you always found it odd that The Honeymooners was a show about two married couples. Well, that's bars, right? That's interesting, right? But you know the date. And Shalom, Sister Sheila, how you doing? How you right? How you doing, Rob Jimbe, poet? Thanks for being part of the community, right? We have to recognize and realize that if we're talking about date, we have a very weird mentality where we are trying to do something that's designed, regardless of, even if you want to say, hey man, you talking about that Bible stuff, blah, blah, fine. In many places in Africa, in many places in the Caribbean, in many places in England, in Europe, excuse me, in many places in Asia, in many places in South America, in many places in North America, in many places in Australia, they are still trying to make sure that there are places to where we are supposed to be looking at relationships long term. But if you only come in with the thought process of a relationship being something that's for a second, or just it might happen once. How you doing, Sister Lawana? Dr. Lawana, right? If you only have the mindset of this will just be for the moment, then you're gonna be thinking about things for the moment. And if we try to make something long term out of something that might have only been with a thought process for the moment, can you see how there might be some issues that pop up? Can you see how on a date, sisters, y'all talk about this all the time, right? Sisters, you correct me. I'll be trying to listen. Y'all say we're supposed to listen and empathize. So I'm just trying to say things that y'all be teaching me. I have an amazing wife. She teaches me quite often, but y'all sisters, you guys teach me as well. Look, sisters, is that not how you guys go on dates? And you say, okay, I'm not going to present my real self. I'm going to dumb myself down. I'm not going to show how educated I really am. I'm not going to talk about the things that actually are going on in my house and things that I actually need society. Oh, Brother Keith. Brother Keith should be fine. Did we get the wrong person? Okay, he's timed down for 300 seconds. Okay, Brother Keith should be fine. Brother Keith is family. How you doing, Sister Tabitha? Right? But I don't know if we were going for the other person. But either way, Brother Keith should be fine. But yeah, when we see these things happening, right, we have to recognize we have some issues because we haven't been taught what marriage is, especially biblically. If you go to a Christian singles, Christian mingles, Christian dating site, swipe left, swipe right, whatever, I don't know them, right? I never used them really when I was still quote unquote single, which is not a biblical thought process because how is one single if they're part of a community? Mm. You hear what I'm saying? How is one single if they are part of a community? That's a worldly concept. I'm single, I'm alone, unless I'm under somebody, or I'm single, or I'm alone, unless somebody else is always dating me. I'm single or I'm alone. No, no. Like, how is one single if you're inside of a community? You've never seen a Bible verse where it says, so and so was walking around and she was single. You've never seen that, have you? You've never seen so and so was walking around and they were dating. Right? You never seen that. You never seen it. You know why you have never seen it? You've never seen it because it's not biblical. We're supposed to be trained from birth to be married, and marriage is an institution. Now, once again, like I said earlier, sex is marriage, marriage is sex is the saying that we have here. Not because it's the only thing that happens in marriage. It's like this. If you go to your job, you get a job, you go to your job. That's right. And if y'all's with us, we're never single as well. We could look at that for sure. Right? Right? So when you go to your job, and how you doing, Chantel? When you go to your job, I need you to recognize this. I need you to focus on this. Watch this. And you go to your job. When you sign the document, you got the job. Does that mean that's the only thing that comes with the job? Of course not. But when you sign the document, when they sign you in, when you give them your ID and all that stuff, when you have that covenant, then there are certain things required within covenant. How you doing, Tabitha? Right? Shalom to everybody coming on all the platforms. Thank you so much for being on. Right? So this is what we're talking about. We're not saying sex is marriage, marriage is sex, because that's it. No problem. No problem. We focus back. We family. Right? So now, right, hear what I'm saying? So watch this. So now that I'm part of your company, I'm expected to do X, Y, Z. Now that I'm part of your company, you're expected to do X, Y, Z. Supreme rising to you, Bruder Richard. How you doing? Right now that we have these things going, now there's some things required that we need to do. Am I? And we have the so marriage is really a messed up thought process because we haven't been trained on what even we're entering into in covenant. First of all, we're going to go over this now in threes. This is a very traditional, a very Israelite way of marriage. This is the way we actually should do things, but we don't do things in this manner at all. In our culture, marriage goes in, I'm going to call it threes. Now, technically, if you don't, so when I say threes, we're talking about ages 0 through 3, ages 4 through 6, ages 7 through 9, ages 10 through 12, ages 13 through 15, ages 16 through 18, ages 19 through 21. We're supposed to be trained on what marriage is, right? So by the time we're, what we would call adults today, we're looking for what our purpose is, and we marry somebody qualified to help us to increase in the purpose or through the purpose that the Most High has given us. Does that make sense? Hey, how you doing, Brother Sean? On here again. Welcome, welcome, and welcome to everybody on all platforms. Shabbat Shalom to you. Or, well, early Shabbat Shalom to you, excuse me. Right? So, in our culture, the mindset, the thought process, you got to catch this. A lot of us are outside of what's supposed to be, but marriage, see, watch this. Marriage is a cornerstone for what we do because marriage is the cornerstone for the relationship we have with the Most High, which means that we should be teaching these babies how to have a relationship with the Most High. Right? They should see the example through us in our marriage. And our marriages should be tight and connected, and we should become one with one another in the same manner, after the same thought process as what we do with the Most High. See, marriage runs, in that sense, marriage runs the country. Marriage runs the nation. You're ran through this prism of marriage. And how you doing, New Malcolm? Right? You're ran through the prism of marriage. Because, right, marriage is an institution. Institution, right? Matter of fact, we're just going to look up, and we're going to look up lawful definition, right, of institution. Just on our Google machines, just real quick, we can just look up what is the lawful definition of an institution. If marriage is an institution, well, what is it legally? Well, in a legal context, an institution is generally defined as an established organization or an established foundation. And sometimes, yes, you could even think of it as this is a fake version of it, but an established corporation. I want you to think about that right from the jump. Marriage is an established organization. Isn't right? Or I'm sorry, well, we're saying, excuse me, institution. But if marriage is an institution, Sister Carla, our apologies. It was a mistake. Please forgive us. Somebody was trying to get us something else, and you accidentally got right. Once again, I'm not sure what happened, but I saw in the comment section that was what happened. So our apologies. Thank you for being back. We're glad that you're back. Right. You say it's a New Testament. They plagiarize Old Testament. No, it's not. But we'll try to see if we can get to that question later. Right. So no problem. So it's our apologies. Hopefully we can get Brother Keith on it. Brother Keith is back or whatever. Right. But it was a mistake. Okay. All right. So, and all those things, excuse me, and we should have everybody back. My fault. Excuse me. We should have everybody back. Excuse me. So, and all these different things, and how you doing? Remnant Truth. Shalom. How you doing, Mariposa? All right, Butterfly. How you doing? But anyways, going back into this, and by the way, New and Old Testament is something that somebody wrote in. You know that for a long time there was no such thing as a New Testament or Old Testament. Somebody just wrote that in, somewhat recently in time, right? Recently, as far as through the prism of how long the timeline is, right? How long life has been around. So somewhat recently in time, persons have had this mindset of New and Old Testament, but we'll get into that later, right? But long story short, but going back to what we were talking about, institution. Yes, I'm well aware of what the scrolls, the survive, what we're talking about. But once again, I'm talking about marriage right now. So if you actually have a question, comment, concern as far as those things later on when we're able to get to it, so be it. But I'm going to focus on marriage as much as persons want me to go into something else. That's what I'm on right now. And it's going to take me a little bit to get through it still. Thank you for being on, though. And if you have patience or long suffering, we invite you to be able to utilize it at this time. So in a legal context, right, an institution, if marriage is an institution, then the institution is generally defined as an established organization. So your marriage is an organization, and it should be based off of what's already established. Shalom, how you doing, big dog? Right? It should be based off of what's already established. Once again, husbands, love your wives as Yechashva Achaba Kodesh Chem. Right? right? Husbands, love your wives. Aish, achaba, Aisha, at, yachashva, achaba, kodeschem, right? Husbands, love your wives as our Messiah loves us. You can ask whatever you want. Okay, yeah, thank you. This foolishness, yeah. All right. How you doing, Brother Dennis? So, that's just straight foolishness. How you doing, Brother Dennis? So, and all the different things that we have on here, right? Okay, the disrespect is now, if you want my attention, right? And you got muted again, right? The disrespect is that. Nobody said anything about disrespect or whatever. Like the disrespect is now. Like I'm answering the question. If you'd like to be able to ask a question, you can. I will get to it in my earliest convenience. If you don't have any ability to have patience or long suffering, then feel free to go somewhere else or run your live session the way that you want to run it. Okay. So once again, the institution of marriage. The institution of marriage is established, but we haven't gone off of what's established in the kingdom. So it's an established organization. It's an established foundation. It is the foundation of what we build our lives and our community and societies upon. It is often public in nature. Your marriage has some things that will be private, of course, but guess what? Your marriage is public. How you doing, Sister Monica? How you doing, Sister Tina? Oh wow, long time no talk to Sister Tina. How you doing? Right. So your marriage is public. Mm-hmm. Persons are going to look at your marriage and they're going to see what your institution, what your belief system is all about. You have to be careful about who you marry because who you marry is a political statement. You guys catching it, right? Like it's a political statement. If somebody becomes a Republican, that's a political statement. If somebody becomes a Democrat, that's a political statement. If somebody says I'm communist, that's a political statement. If somebody says they're a Marxist, that's a political statement. No, not public by force. And hey, how you doing, Sister Kimberly? Not public by force, but it's going to be something that's in public. At some point, everybody will know that you are married. And at some point, persons will find out what that person believes, what they think, how they live, how they operate, right? What they wear, how they treat children, their past, their present, their future, right? Their connection to you, those who are invited to the wedding, those who see pictures, right? So yeah, so there are things that are private for sure in your marriage, but you must recognize that your marriage is a public declaration of who you are. Now, I'm not saying everybody will know every single thing about your marriage, no, but it will be, it's an institution, right? Christ says it like this. When I was talking about Christ and how we should love the way that we should love our wives the way that Christ loves the assembly, Christ told his bride, Christ told the apostles, Christ said unto them, and we're talking about spiritual bride, right? Christ made it a point to say, um, by this will men know that you are my disciples, by the way that you love one another. Love you one another the way that I have loved you. In other words, anybody who's part of this family should love one another the way that I have loved you. Husbands, by the way, when you're looking for love from your wife, have you taught your wife how to love the way that Christ loves you? Mm. How you doing? Tell me those things to be a part of the community, right? Like Christ says, persons are going to know that you're mine, that you're in a relationship with me, that you roll with me, that you are connected to me, that you're faithful to me by the way that you love others. It's a public, it's part, not everything's going to be in public, but you know, it's a public declaration similar to baptism, right? Baptism is a public declaration. The names that you use, public declaration, right? What you decide to do after you're baptized. Person pay attention to you after you're baptized, right? You said you're baptized. You said your life changed. You said you believe in the Most High. You said you're going to walk different. You said that you're going to stop doing and stop doing. Person start watching because you made a public declaration. Well, you made a public declaration. Many of us have made a public declaration in the sense that your marriage belongs even to the state. So the state now has a right to every once in a while check out things in your marriage, from taxes to children to how much money you make, to if you get a divorce, to if you separate, to police being able to come and knock on your door for domestic disputes, right? If you're married, they treat it different. Believe it or not, there's certain things they're going to treat different. right? If you come before a judge and you have a dispute in your marriage, certain things are going to be treated differently, right? It's in the public. I'm not saying everything is for everybody, but what I'm saying is that the marriage is something that affects the community. It's an institution, right? If it's a public institution, really what we're saying is it's a government institution or an institution by the governed or that affects the governed, that affects the community. So in our community, in the kingdom, marriage affects the kingdom. When your marriage is strong, it affects the kingdom. When your marriage is weak, it affects the kingdom. That's how serious it is what we're entering into, right? It's an institution. Once again, it's an institution. It's generally defined as an established organization, an established foundation. This institution, an institution is often public in nature, and it is founded for a specific purpose. Your marriage has a specific purpose, such as education. Your marriage educates, such as healthcare. Your marriage can teach how persons how to be healthy. Your marriage can take away your health. Excuse me, right? If you're not careful, or even taking care of the health of your spouse, right? Your marriage, your marriage has a specific can have a specific purpose or can be dealing with finance. This is an institution. So what about a widow? We can try and talk about a widow in a little bit. I'm gonna have to step back on the widow just for a second because a widow, there's things that do come with it. You might have to remind me about it too. If I forget about it, please bring it back up, right? But the marriage is an institution. It also it can be considered to be a facility that provides care or shelter to individuals, right? In a broader sense, a significant, enduring practice or system in society. And then it says, I love the fact, because it's just talking about definition of institution, but just in case somebody's like, Kofi, you trying to put two things that don't go together. It says this at the end of the definition. It says, a significant, enduring practice or system in society, such as marriage. So yes, marriage is an institution, and it's supposed to be stronger than the institution of prisons. It's supposed to be stronger than the institution of hospitals. It's supposed to be stronger than the institution of the president of the United States Corporation. Your marriage is supposed to be stronger than these things. Have you been trained how to make your marriage stronger, your covenant stronger, your contract stronger? It's protected by the Constitution. Because a contract can be even more powerful than the Constitution because the Constitution allows for it to be so. You have freedom of religion. That means that you should be able to institute things in your marriage and it be free within your house. But our houses, right, we're trained to make sure that we just go with whatever everybody else says. When you actually have an institution that's supposed to guard, right? It's even considered to be an entity. It can live outside of what's going on, right? Even some legal actions can take place simply because you're married. It's an institution. So now that we got this stuff out the way, I know the whole thing's not going to be about marriage today, but I'm going to take my time with it. As you guys know, we take marriage very seriously here. And so I'm going to take my time, but I'm not going to take up the whole time. But that's why I told the person yesterday who asked at the end of the live session, I was like, we'll make it the first thing today because when we talk about marriage, there's a lot of stuff that we're out of pocket. So going back to the threes, let's discuss those threes because we're supposed to train these babies how to be married, right? And before we get into this part, I just want to bring up something that everybody uses but abuses. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22, when it says, wives, submit yourself to your own husbands. And then Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the assembly. Don't forget that you need to also comprehend that marriage takes place once again between you and the Most High before anything else. The 7-day David fast, I don't know about a David fast. That's a new one for me. You're talking about Daniel fast. Daniel fast is something that really is not anything in particular the way the person's trying to do it. It was Daniel trying to make sure that he could show that we could eat things outside of what the world tells us to eat. So there is no 100% biblical way that you're supposed to do those things. Now, if you're talking about fasting, we can talk about that, but I'd have to get to that later on, right? So you might have to remind me about that one because I still got a little ways to go. But thank you for the question. And I am trying to pay attention to the questions. It's just right now I got to deal with this first one and do my due diligence on it. All right. So So when we're talking about this institution of marriage, the institution is something that affects a society, right? So that means that it affects our children. And we should know this. So when we go to Ephesians chapter 5, before we get to Ephesians 5:22, my pleasure. Baba Kasha, thank you. So Ephesians 5:25 and Ephesians 5:22, which is where we get that husbands love your wives and wives submit to your own husbands. And persons lie to you, by the way, because they'll say the Bible never says that wives should love their husbands. It says submit. That's not true either. Your Bible talks about how wives, I think it's Titus chapter 2, if I'm not mistaken, tells wives how they should make sure that the elder wives show their younger wives how to love their husbands, right? Right. And also right there in the same chapter, if you go one verse back, Ephesians 5:21, it says, that we should love one another. We should submit to one another as we do to the Most High. So husbands, submission is required as well. Right? If your wife is doing something led by the Most High sometimes will tell you, hey, submit to the mission of your wife. Because you are one. You're still the husband, but humble yourself, husband. And sometimes you need to be quiet and follow, and she might see something that's being given to her, and you might need to roll with her. Right? It's this whole weird thing of you should never listen to Eve because Eve ate of the fruit is really crazy. Right? Your wife and you are one. And some of you have wives, not some of you, all of you have wives that have something, the ability to see something, do something that you cannot. SOC doesn't exist in the manner it exists if my wife doesn't start training me on some things. You said, didn't the symbol come from Kemet? No, it did not. Before Kemet existed, there was Cush, and in Cush, this is something that's there. And by the way, we've already shown this before, so you can go ahead and if you want to look it up on our YouTube channel, I've already gone through a bunch of different stuff and talked about this. If you'd like me to talk about the Ankh specifically later, we can. I'm answering on marriage right now, but long story short, if you know about the 3 different types of Avda or Ifrit, or what you call Hebrew, there's Paleo Hebrew, then there's like a Hebrew that you guys think is Paleo Hebrew, but it's really not. And then there's this modern Hebrew, and there's really a third one. There's really a fourth one that's kind of in between the last two I talked about. But anyways, you'll discover that the Ankh, or what you call the Ankh, which was appropriated by Kemet from Cushitic persons from others, is actually something that Israelites use as like a cursive version of the Tav. But and even if you see on this one, this has like a tet inside of it and some other things that actually means it's not exactly what you think it is. But many of you only come from one prism, in the prism of like if it's it's an idol and all this stuff. But I'll talk about that later. Once again, welcome on though. If that's if that's your way of saying hello, how are you doing? So in marriage, and you notice whenever we're trying to talk about marriage, everybody's ready to do anything we can to get away from marriage, because the spirit of this thing is crucial, where persons have gotten away from it so far that we can't speak about it. Right? So when you talk about marriage, when you speak about marriage, right, you have to recognize that marriage, societally, even in Ephesians chapter 5, we're getting ready to go through those 3s we talked about. But when we talk about marriage, specifically, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ignore persons, but I got to focus now. So, right, we start to get into the time heavy now. So when we talk about marriage, we have to make it a point to really be specific. And what Ephesians 5:21, when it says submit yourselves one to another, that means husbands and wives submit yourself one to another. And even before that, in Ephesians 5:19, it talks about how you need to make sure that you protect your mindset before you even enter into a marriage. And by the way, when you see this term husband and wife, just like in Israelite culture, is the same thing. Husbands and wives, the word they're using there does not mean you're already married. It means you are qualified to be a husband and qualified to be a wife. This is why your Bible says, he who finds a wife, that means she is qualified. It doesn't mean he who finds somebody that belongs to somebody else, right? But he who finds a wife. He who finds a wife. Well, that's not what Barashat Alav or Yashar or Enoch or any of them say. But if that's where you are, so be it, right? That's your thought process. That's not what's written, especially not in the original. So, right? But you have a right to believe. But once again, I'm gonna speak on marriage right now. So even when we're talking about marriage, right, we don't have the mindset of ensuring that you have to be pre-qualified. Like when you go to get your driver's license, you got to be pre-qualified to even take the test, right? If you go to get your hair cut, that person, if they're professional, is supposed to be somebody who is pre-qualified. They have a license, right, to do so, and they have to do certain things to get that license. If somebody gives you tattoos, they're supposed to go through certain things and teachings and be qualified into somebody in order to be able to receive a license. They're supposed to be pre-qualified before they're being put in the position. But to get a marital license, what's the pre-qualifications? And persons keep changing it up so much now to where they tell you what is or what isn't marriage. What are the pre-qualifications? Sure. If that's a question, that's not really a question. But if your thing is to try and attack me and not act like I don't know, even besides Josephus, Flavius Josephus, really, right? Flavius Josephus, who we talking about, as if I don't know Romans chapter 10, verses 11 and 12. But then we don't want to tell the truth about Romans chapter 10, verse 16, and what Romans chapter 10, verse 10 actually means as well. And talk about how Paul in Romans chapter 11 talks about us coming together and the fact that, so we're talking about nationality. If you're talking from the perspective of nation or nationality, then what you say is appropriate. But once again, I'm focused on marriage. You see how this happens? Like when we talk about something specific that actually is something that will help us to have a mindset even about what you're talking about. Persons don't give us an opportunity, or something in the spirit is messed up because we haven't been trained on what marriage is. And some persons are so busy talking about the stuff that you actually don't realize how bigoted of a response or your visceral response is to me, because your mindset is, oh, he's got locks, he's wearing clothes that are of his culture, he doesn't mind speaking against typical Christian thought processes like dating. And so the thought process is, he's a Hebrew Israelite, I must go ahead and attack him and tell him that something that he's already aware of, rather than listen to him to see what he has to say. But it's because you're not, the lack of discernment shows a lack of connection to your husband, Christ. See how important marriage is and how we have to get that together? Marriage is the foundation of what we do as a nation, right? We should seek first the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of Elohim and all his righteousness. And then all these things, including the ad hominem, will go away, because the things that we need shall be added unto us. It will give no thought for tomorrow, you being afraid of what I'm going to say next. For those things will take care of themselves. See, when we're married to Christ in the original fashion, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against the original stuff that we're getting out of pocket on. We come into the knowledge of who Christ really is. Okay. If you would like, anyway, like I said, I'm talking about marriage. This person's like, you better answer every question. And even though you've been muted, I will still answer your question. Your question is light work. Your question is light work. And by the way, how do you explain that Timothy was also circumcised? By Paul. How do you explain that Christ would have been circumcised? Come on, right? And does it really matter as far as your salvation? All right. So anyways, right? And if Flavius Josephus says what he says, Flavius Josephus says that he also, in one of his forewords, if you would call it that, or his introductions to one of his books, he makes it a point to say how persons will believe him about everything he says, except for him being an Israelite and what his culture says. But everybody will believe him about stuff. And persons still do that with him to this day, because persons won't believe him about stuff that he says about his people, yet will believe him about everything having to do with Rome. Interesting how that works out and how persons still do that today. Make sure you're not falling into the same trap. But once again, persons believe, once again, they think that we have no knowledge, that we're idiots out here, and that we have no ability to be able to talk about things. But who shall believe our report? We're the ones reporting. So you can listen to the report, or you can go ahead and change the channel and listen to CNN or Fox News or whatever. All right. So anyways, so marriage so marriage is something that you're pre-qualified for, right? Husbands, love your wives, right? It's talking about, hey, those of you who are looking to be husbands, that's the context. Love your wives, as Yahashua loved the assembly and gave himself for it. And wives, those who are looking to be wives, make sure that you know what it is to submit to the mission of your husband. Not to submit, just submit to the man. It's not submission, it's submission, right? So if he has the mission of Christ, and that mission of Christ is one with the, can encapsulate and cover and protect and also guide and also at times lift up your mission, then you guys can become one in mission. submission, submitted to the mission. All right. So these threes we're talking about. We're freezing. Okay, my apologies. I don't know if I can do anything about you guys over here on YouTube. How you doing, Sister Renee? Amen, Sister Renee. You're right. All right. And I apologize. I'm freezing over here. I can't see. Hold on. All right, well, we do have a kind of a bad signal over here. Can you guys hear or see me over here? Can everybody see and hear me? Yes, no, maybe so. It's clear. Okay. All right. No issues? Okay. All right. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So where are we at? So let's get into these threes and let's sew this up and then we can start going through some of the other things. Right? But let's get into these threes. So ages 0 through 3, right? We would make sure that we would raise our children to be who they are as far as boys and girls. This does not mean that they cannot learn how to read early, they cannot learn how to walk, they cannot learn how to do things that babies should, right? What I'm saying is we teach these babies ages 0 through 3. The main thing we're focused on is you're a boy or girl. This is completely different than what society's doing nowadays, is it not? But in our culture, the first 3 years we train you 0 to 3. And I say 0 because that's even from within the womb, if you will, right? Technically, marriage starts even before, and training your children starts before, because whatever you do now can affect generations, correct? So if you can put generational curses on these babies, you can also put generational barak or generational blessings on these babies too. So if we're going to put generational barak on them, it starts with what we're doing now. My grandchildren are being trained by me right now. My great-grandchildren are being trained by me right now. What I do today, how you doing, Sister Judith? What I do today affects tomorrow. So if I seek the kingdom of Elohim today, then Elohim says you're taking care of tomorrow because he will take care of it, right? But he can only be allowed to do so, right? You're in covenant with him. Your contract says he's only allowed to do so if you take care of things today, right? So I'm training my children now, even in the sense of these live sessions or these books that are written or what we talk about later and later, right? You said you don't count age like the system. Well, we'll see biblically what's going on. Because even if you're talking about count age, well, then fine. Let's get into some murky waters. But if we're going to do that, then we have to also take into account how are these persons raised? Because if they're not raised to be qualified at ages, then you still need to treat them. By the way, this goes for even adults. So the young thing, I'm not going to dive into too much because we know the murky waters it is. That is what it is. And a lot of that stuff is relevant. So we need to kind of be careful about that, right? At the same time, though, if we're going to talk about these things as far as ages, then there's 50-year-old boys out here because they haven't been trained right. And there's 50-year-old girls out here. So you shouldn't be looking at them either. And just saying, oh, because they're 21 or because they're 24, some of you trying to make the age lesser. I'm not going to say those ages because some of us use it to excuse stuff. But that being said, let's look at how they were raised in the first place. But that means that it goes both ways. And that means also for us, if you haven't gone through this and you're not living by this and you haven't corrected some things that messed you up in this, then you're not qualified either for anybody of any age. You know what I'm saying? I'm with you. I'm just saying the question is murky, you know what I'm saying? Or not. It puts us where we have to go wade in some murky waters. So there are certain things that I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to uplift it. I don't want anybody to say Kofi did say blah blah. I'm not going to touch that because I'm not going to uplift some of these cats that be looking for. You know, we already got enough cats in assemblies and all over the place that are doing some crazy stuff behind the scenes. Anyways, we don't want to increase it. That's why I say what I say. Not directed at you. All right. I'm just saying, though, we got cats out here that's wild. And so, you know, I got to be careful what comes out of my mouth and what somebody might try to say we touch and agree on, because we definitely don't. I'm on it. Thank y'all for the love. All right. So ages 0 through 3, we train these babies on what it is to be a boy and a girl. Guess what that means? That means there are boy colors. Yes. And there are girl colors. Yes. Right? It's important. And there are things that, and we don't allow certain persons around them that could confuse them to make them think that males and females aren't males or females, or that they can be fluid, or they can be a male today or a female tomorrow, or that they can be queer, which just basically means it's a weird way of basically saying you're bi or you're fluid, right? Or we don't have persons that are trans. I know you don't want to hear this stuff. I'm just telling you the truth. We wouldn't have somebody trans around a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, because a 2-year-old is trying to figure out life as a 2-year-old and try to be protected by family. And here it is that you're introducing somebody that could warp their perception of who Yah says they are. This is when we have to not be as inclusive. We have to learn how to be exclusive. You hear what I'm saying? Right? This is when we have to be inclusive. I'm sorry, we've become too inclusive, excuse me. And we got to learn how to be exclusive on some of this stuff. Like, when your child is born, see, because you're in the West and because you're in the system where you got to go right back to work, maybe you get 2 weeks off, if that. Maybe you get a week off. Maybe you get a couple days off if somebody likes you. Maybe you're in a position where you work from home, so it's cool. But for a lot of persons, once you have that baby, even if it's 6 months, guess what? In our culture, in our community, once mama has a baby, do you know that mama is supposed to be separated from just about everybody, because she needs to rest. How many mothers get to rest and family takes over, and aunties and sisters and grandmama and mama and everybody comes by and says, hey, you make sure you breastfeed that baby, and you make sure you sleep sometimes next to that baby too. Make sure they get skin to skin. But we got the baby, right? Culture, community from the beginning. We don't have these things instituted. Right? This is supposed to be the institution of marriage. See, if the whole community comprehends marriage, we comprehend even what happens at birth with the child. And we're all hands on deck, because that's not just your baby. How you doing, Blue Side? Right? That's not just your baby. No offense, no shade. It's not. That's ours. It takes a village to raise a child. Now, that's mainly your responsibility. I'm not saying it's not, but that's not just your baby. You said in true Hebrew law? Well, I don't know. We might have to. Okay, well, I think I see where you come from on that. That's not 100. Well, okay. Well, anyway, we'll see. We'll see. But what? So I think I get where you're going. But anyway, but when you had that baby, that's not your baby. You understand what I'm saying? Right? That's not your baby. That's ours. And so mothers don't rest. Mothers don't even get a chance to rest. Babies don't even get a chance to see how family operates, because it's not part of our society. How you doing, Sister Tasha? Oh, Sister Tasha, can you send me the information I asked for again? I just realized that we never got your stuff taken care of. I meant to do so. I thought I had reached back out to you, but now that I think about it, I don't think I did. So my apologies on that. But if you get a chance, yeah, thank you. When you get a chance, if you can send me that information again, so we can try and figure that stuff out. But yeah, you have to recognize and realize, so that's something that happens. But in our community, the ages 0 through 3, that means when the baby's in the womb. That means when the sperm hits the egg, right? We don't do that A word that rhymes with extortion. And I know there's some sisters that have done it. And by the way, if you have, repent, ask for forgiveness. I know some of you are ashamed and this and that or whatever. It is what it is. Right? I know some of us are ashamed of that. It is what it is. If you've done that, a lot of persons, right, taught you something that was weird. Thank you, Sister Carla. I see you. Taught you to be outside. That's not righteousness in any way, shape, or form. That being said, hey, if men in the Bible have committed murder, committed adultery, have done all types of stuff or whatever, have even taken the lives of children, and they themselves could be forgiven, why not you, right? Right? Don't do this thing to where you cannot be forgiven. Forgive yourself, and it might be hard. And guess what? If you have had a child to where something like that was done, and that child didn't have an opportunity to be able to be with us, live a life that makes that baby proud. Leave a legacy that makes that baby proud. But keep moving forward. Right? Keep moving forward. Okay? All right. So, but yeah, we focus on there, a boy or a girl. It's important. Those are going to be crucial years, ages 0 through 3. Right? They're pretty much eating pooping, sleeping, right? And they're learning stuff. They're learning how to share. They're learning how to speak. They're learning how to walk. They also need to learn early what it is to be a male or a female and the differences. Obviously, there's certain things they will not learn, but right? Now, next one, ages 4 through 6 comes up next. Ages 4 through 6, then when we start weaning, right, them, right? Now, obviously, they might have been finished breastfeeding, per se, even though breastfeeding can actually go longer than what a lot of persons think. But, because especially because we're in the West and because we're worried about this and because we've even said, don't let your breast become too whatever, there's a lot of different reasons why breastfeeding has gone something we've gone away from. Obviously, there's some persons, if you have issues with it, which, by the way, just real quick, if you are getting ready to have a child, or really, sisters, you should always be thinking about having your body, even if you're past childbirth years. Sisters, don't let society change what's going on. See, this is all in the institution. It's how the marriage works, right? Person don't think about this, but once again, marriage runs. You see how marriage starts to run many different things in your life? So I need you to recognize if you're looking at having a child, or even if you've had a child, you know how they'll tell you to take prenatal vitamins, and a lot of places, they'll start giving you the prenatal vitamins after you're pregnant, or you don't even think about prenatal vitamins until after your pregnancy, after you deliver, if you will. Well, guess what? Prenatal vitamins, so to speak, prenatal vitamins are before, right? Before the natal process, right? So before, you should already be taking these, and you should have those vitamins to that level at all times, because guess what, right? You were always supposed to be ready to have a child. That's how you were created. I'm not saying that's all you have value for. See, persons will try to change this up on you real quick. We got to be careful. I'm not saying that that's all you are valued to do. What I'm saying, though, is that your body is created to have a child once a month. You ever thought about that? And how you doing, Daniel? Thanks for being part of the community. Your body is created once a month to have a child. That's what it's created to do. That's the strength that you have. That's why you can take pain that men cannot. Right? Because right, that's why you go through this stuff, even with dealing with the emotions and things that are going on. When the period happens, when you become unclean, if you will, when it's unlawful to do things with you, right? It's because there's death that's happening, because life was supposed to be happening. The life did not meet the zara, the seed, right? And therefore, since literally it's also the same word for word, since the word did not contact the egg, the seed did not contact the egg that should have received word, should have received seed, now begins to die. And so when it begins to die, we are not supposed to touch even dead bodies in our culture. If we do, we're supposed to have certain procedures of cleaning ourselves, right? So if there's a dead body inside of your garden needs a chance to be able to revive and have life. Just like when you finish having a baby, what are you supposed to do? Give a chance to rest, and your body can revive to be ready to give life again. How you doing, double OG, triple OG? Welcome, right? So you see what's going on? So you should so that's why it's unclean. So these things affect us. So sisters, but you should always have, when they say when you get ready to have a baby, take these vitamins and do that, you should always have that mentality of taking those vitamins or doing this or whatever. You should always be ready to give life, not because it's the only thing you have value for, but that's what your body is created to do. You see that? So, but ages 4 through 6, you're supposed to then get ready to what? To wean the child. So the child is not going to be on mama's hip as much, especially the male child. Why? Because ages 7 through 9, your daughter will become mama's apprentice, and the son will become daddy's apprentice. This is why you do what your daddy or your mama does. Because in our culture, you're going to end up keeping up what we keep up. If your family is praise and worship, does praise and worship, guess what? We're raising you to do praise and worship. How you doing, Callum? If your family, has, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry. If your family does, whatever. If your family are lawyers, guess what you're going to be? You're going to be a lawyer. If your family are carpenters, Christ is a carpenter because Joseph is a carpenter. You're going to do what your father does, right? You're going to end up following these precepts. right? You're going to follow these things or whatever. You're going to make sure that you do it. And generationally, therefore, we make sure that generation to generation to generation, we know who to go to. And we know that we have a particular part of our community taken care of. See how the marriage now is starting to affect the community and affect the next generation. And by the way, your babies are being raised by you, not being raised by a school system that wants you to say that it's important that they learn a bunch of information that they may never use. You see how true marriage begins to affect things? Now, ages 10 through 12 is when you begin extreme education, which is a lot of you call school, but you can do so in your own house, or you can find others around that can teach things that maybe you don't have access to. So just because you're not great at mathematics does not mean somebody else is not, right? Or especially nowadays online. You can do what, Khan Academy or something, pay $4 a month. I think that takes care of all your math and science or something like that. Or you can do Outschool, or you can do all these different programs that are out. SOC, we do, homeschool stuff for our baby. There's a lot of different things that you guys can try out and see. Right? There's a lot of things. Well, I mean, Christ, you could say is a little bit of everything, right? But as far as the one that they tell you that they talk about what his father did. They do that for a specific reason because his daddy did is what he did, right? So these things begin to we begin to see these things over and over and over again, right? We're supposed to make sure. This is why when we say we want to help persons and we want to make sure we're sowing into each other's business, this is not just sowing into your business just for today. We got to start thinking about, when I'm sowing into so-and-so's business, I'm expecting a return that their grandchildren are going to be doing this. See, I'm helping to sow into and when somebody's sowing into my business, I'm making sure I'm using it so that their children will do it. And when we set aside the tithe, when we set aside the offering, when we set aside the different things that we're doing, this is so that generations might come out different. See, the marriage is the institution because we're ultimately married to Christ. And being married to Christ, our husband is asking us to do these things, to set aside things that we might be able to be taken care of as his bride. Right? Okay, so now ages 13 through 15 come up. This is when we start saying you are not just a male, female. We're saying you are going to become an adult male, an adult female. You see the training? How we're getting you ready? This is what husbands and wives are supposed to be. We don't come into relationships with all this training or thought process. Some of us still are trying to do things based off of a very Western Eurocentric thought process, theocracy, right? And not realizing that the bureaucracy that we are attached to and all that bureaucratic tape is stuff that's really messing us up because we're not attached to the actual kingdom. Ladach Shamayam, with the kingdom of heaven. Okay. So now, all praises. So now, Sister Mignon, I was supposed to send you something too yesterday. I got it for you. It's gonna be you're gonna get it right after the live. My greatness. All right. So many different things we got on the calendar and schedule and stuff. Anyway, Tadal Vakudash. All right, Salachia. So now that when we get to, excuse me, where are we at? How you doing, Sister Jessica? Or Jalen. We got Jessica and Jalen. So now we're in ages 13 through 15. And in ages 13 through 15, we're dealing specifically with the training of what it is to be an adult male and adult female, and being specific now with scripture and with actions and even being separated some. Because now, little boys and little girls are at the age where they can have children. So we do separate some of those things. Right? We do separate those things. You can't be in certain positions, right? Solomon is only 10, but he's doing a volleyball thing. He was the only boy that showed up, and we were kind of laughing and smirking, and because we were like, he's the only boy and this and that, but he ain't paying attention to that. But some of the girl, because he's he's bigger and he looks like he's older in ways. He looks like he's older than what he is, and so he's there. And then at the end, a girl wanted to go ahead and work with him one-on-one for some skills and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I made sure I was involved in the volleyball bumps and stuff. But you get to an age where it's very clear where and they should have these things because they're growing into a certain age. Their bodies are being prepared for certain things, et cetera, right? They've been created right? But just because their body is ready for certain things doesn't mean that they have the training required, right? So you gotta be ready. You gotta start thinking about these things. This is why also two parents are supposed to be heavily involved in choosing husbands and wives. We're gonna end with that, but let me just try to complete this. So ages 13 through 15, you're raising them and training them on what it is to be an adult male and adult female. Because at age 16, that's when you do the bar mitzvah or the bat mitzvah, or what we call bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, right? So they're supposed to come before a council, right? They're supposed to come before a group, and they're supposed to be asked specific questions about what it is that they've learned, how they operate, what is a husband, what's a wife, what does the Bible say about this, that, whatever. And when they complete that, then we go ahead and we party, right? How you doing, Brother Omar? Right. So once that is completed, then yeah, we party. We have a great time. We talk about all these different things, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Then ages 16 through 18. Then ages 16 through 18. After that, we then train them. They're not finished yet. We train you on what it is to be a husband and a wife. Being an adult doesn't mean that you know what it is to be a husband or a wife. Knowing the law doesn't mean you know what it is to be a husband or a wife. You can quote, but that's a different level. So we take 3 years to train you on that, but then we're still not finished. One will say, okay, well, you're qualified to be a husband and wife, but you're not qualified to have a family yet. So now ages 19 through 21, we teach you on what it is to be a father and a mother. That means you also have to know, when we talk about husband, wife, male, female, father, mother, we have to also make sure that you recognize what's on the opposite end as well and how they operate. Because yes, you might want to be guarded against some things, but also, if we be honest, you are going to need to take some time out to make sure that not only are you so guarded, but also you need to know how to love your wife. And what does a wife need? What does a husband need? How do you love your husband? How do you honor your husband? How do you honor your wife? Right? So we go through a process with all these things. Now, once we gotten past raising you what it is to be, a mother and a father through age 21, at age 22, the son, guess what's supposed to happen then? We way behind on this time. The son is supposed to be given his inheritance at age 22. And we say, your training's been given. Make us proud. Here's some land. Here's a building. Here's whatever you need. Get to it. And that son begins to be given a work, which, by the way, is biblical, because before Adam had Aishah, or before Adam had Aishah, or before Adam had a wife, right? Before he had Ayazar, before he had helpmeet, he had work. He inherited from his father a place called the Garden of Eden, that he was supposed to do work, dress and keep it, name the animals. And in the midst of doing his work, he found the necessity for a wife who would be his helpmeet, because in the midst of completing an assignment, name all the animals, right? So in the midst of completing his assignment, naming all the animals, what happened? He began to realize, oh snap, all the animals have a helpmeet, but I don't have a helpmeet. And he realized what he needed to help him in his work. Once he did this, the Most High realized Adam has come into agreement with his thought process, and so now that he's come into agreement with it, I will make this help me come into being. And then he saw her and saw helpmeet, that was her name, Ayazar, helpmeet, and he called her his wife, and he called himself husband. It doesn't say, for this cause will a man leave his mother and father. It actually says, for this cause will an Aish or an Ish or a husband. For this cause will a husband leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. He said, anybody that comes out of me, anybody who's Adam kind, mankind, anybody who comes out of me, they will leave their mother and father and cleave to their wife. If they're like me, that's what they must do. He spoke that over himself and his own bloodline. In perfect, no sin at this point, in perfect alignment with the will of his father. You see? So we have these things there, right? And then, so at age 22, son, here's your inheritance. At age 22, daughters, you can work, you can do all this stuff, but what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to protect them and keep them and make sure they're safe. So she has business. She can have business, she can have land, she can hang out with her friends, they can go do stuff, but you stay at your father's house, because your father's supposed to make sure he protects you and keeps you and honors you. That's why when you see even the marriages that happen, even in church, right? The father is supposed to walk the bride down, or a father figure is supposed to walk the bride down. Why? Because what goes on? We say, "Who giveth this woman away to be wed?" And the father says, "I do." Before they say "I do," he says "I do." Why? Because there's supposed to be transference of what, right, of power and authority. And so, see, I have been her physical father, and I've been her spiritual husband. I've been teaching her what it is, and she's looked at me her whole life, and I've been able to sow stuff into her, and she's seen how I treat her mother. But I can never be her physical husband. You will be the one that now can become her spiritual father and her physical husband, and therefore her spiritual husband as well. You'll be able to be all these things to her that I cannot. I've trained her, and I made sure I raised her, and I protected her. When she can't become one with me. She becomes one with you. You said your dad walked out at an early age? Yeah, unfortunately. So walked you down. Excuse me, walked you down. Sorry, I misread. Walked you down at age 26 a month, right? But that's where that comes from. Even though that's not necessarily the biblical way of marriage, that is a biblical principle, right? Transference of authority. Because now we're saying this is no longer, obviously you'll be able to have connection with your father, but what we're saying at this point is this is not really your father anymore. He's saying, in a sense, I got to bow down. This is your husband. I have to allow him to do what he's supposed to do in order that he can protect and honor and keep and pray over you and watch over you, and yes, even provide, and yes, even have children with you. There are things that I have to back off on so that you can fulfill God's will for you. So, in all these different things, right, we see this stuff happen. We see this stuff taking place. And there's something that I also want to introduce to you, right? And after this, I should be done with the marriage stuff. I know there were a couple other questions regarding marriage, but I should be ultimately kind of finished for today. And like I said, when somebody asks me a question, especially about just marriage in general, there's a lot that comes with it. I'm not even answering everything. That being said, we'll end with this little tidbit. John chapter 14, if you get a chance, go over these for yourself. John chapter 14 and Matthew 25. Now, we've been going over Matthew 25 in our Revelation series quite a bit, so you guys should be kind of familiar with that. But these are marital scriptures, and we don't know them because we don't know culture. So John 14 is where it says, "Beloved," which is David, Judah. But "Beloved, let not your heart be troubled. If you believeth in the Father, also believeth in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would not have told you. I go to prepare a place for thee, that where I am, you can be with me also. And if I prepare this place for you, then you will be able to come," right? I believe that's like John 14, verses 1 through 5, something like that. All right. That is a marital scripture, usually only talked about when persons have passed away, right? Usually we only hear somebody talking about that to end a sermon, or usually we hear somebody giving a sermon when somebody's, being funeralized. But this is not what it actually is talking about. Well, obviously there's context there, but that's not the thought process of this is only for when somebody passes away. This is actually a marital scripture, because in our culture, there's something called a knocking ceremony. Once again, the parents are involved in your decision making. And if you don't have parents, somebody who represents your parents or represents your family, or somebody you look up to, whatever, somebody that you trust, should be able to be part of what's going on, right? And help you to make decisions outside of yourself. And so, "Beloved, let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in the Father, also believeth in me." So, hey, this is a thought process. This is a mindset. There's something called a knocking ceremony. Even Christ says in Revelation, I think it's Revelation 3, could be Revelation 2. I think it's Revelation 3 where he says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." Behold, I stand at the door and knock, right? But it's a knocking ceremony. It's saying that we're not married correctly. We're not married to Christ. See, in a knocking ceremony, this still exists, by the way. There's many cultures, many places in the world where they still actually do this. And so they knock on the door, right? And you would bring, tea or wine or something of that nature. So let's do it like this. Sorry, I'm gonna have to do this real quick. We're running out of time for the podcast. but we still have a lot of time for Q&A. I'm going to try and do this somewhat quickly. So the father, so the bride is, or one who will eventually become the bride, she's qualified as a wife, is found by, somebody will eventually become the bridegroom, the husband. They talk. He offers kind of like a resume. They don't date or anything, but he sees, he studies, he asks questions about her. He presents himself to her in a certain manner and says, hey, and he might even know her because we're supposed to be community. And so he comes to her, he talks to her, he says, hey, I think that you would be a wife to help me with these things. I think I could help you as a husband with da. I have a great passion for you. I've been watching you for a little while, et cetera, et cetera. And they have a conversation. Maybe even have a few conversations. If the wife, who's qualified, but she's not his wife yet, if she decides, yes, I'm going to go ahead, I think this is something that would be honorable and would make us do well, then they have a conversation with their parent, or their parents will have a conversation. The father of the bridegroom to be knocks on the door. The father and mother of the bride to be are inside. If they accept the knock, then that means that they can have conversation. They have a conversation, they talk. They work out terms, dowry and things like that are put into place because she has value. So if you really do truly honor her, believe in her, and you can take care of her, you should be able to show it, right? Once you show those things are agreed upon, they will have wine or tea poured into a cup for the father of the now groom to be, and they shake on it or whatever you might do, right? Whatever culture you do, might do something different, bow, shake, etc. But they make sure that they say, okay, this is what's going to happen. Then they go to and other persons in the community find out about it. Once again, it's not just your marriage, right? So then you go to the leadership. Everybody agrees there. You actually get your paperwork done then. When you're betrothed, when you're affianced, when you become fiance, etc. Then you actually are get your paperwork then. The husband to be will then leave and go back to his father's house, not back to the land he's been given from his inheritance. He'll leave and go back to his father's house, and he'll start to build on his father's land and add on to his father's house called a mansion. A mansion is not just a big house, a mansion is an add-on. So he will build on, how you doing, Sister Greta? He will build into his father's house a mansion. And his father, right, will watch and see. And as a father, he'll be like, well, my daughter-in-law, they said she likes to do this, and I want her to be able to grow food, and I want her to be able to have stuff for the children, and I want her to have this in the kitchen, and I want y'all to have this in the bedroom. And if you guys are going to have babies here, we need to make sure the babies can run around some, and da. So the son is building the house. No man knows the date of the hour but the father. That's a marital scripture, right, to help us to comprehend what's going on, because the son is building an add-on to the house, a mansion, and once he's completed the mansion, right, then the father will tell the son. The son won't know until the father says, hey, complete that, because he's given instruction the whole time. Once he finishes doing what the father has instructed him, the father will say, go and get my daughter. And then, so he will dress up in certain robes and everything, might even have horns playing or whatever, but he's going to start going towards his wife. And the whole community will start to celebrate. And the wife, who in Matthew 25 is keeping oil in her lamp, that's a way of her saying vigilant and a reminder to her every day to be preparing herself for her husband. Right? So she gets word. This is why you had the 10 virgins situation going on. 5 of the brides, 5 of the wives were wise, 5 were foolish. Right? You know your husband's coming. You know you're supposed to do this, but instead of being diligent, you don't know the day or the hour he's coming. You decided, well, I'll just use it for something else, or I'm not really worried about it. Now he's coming, and now you won't be able to enter in with your husband, come into a union and become one. Right? So that's a marital scripture. That's something that we're supposed to know. We're supposed to realize. We're supposed to live by. But since we don't know, and nobody's told us this, we have the wrong idea. So all these things happen in marriage before you're even together. Then once the two come together, they are one. And the oneness is so important because they're both supposed to have blood. You know, semen is blood. So the blood actually enters in, or when they enter into each other and penetrate and the hymen is broken, blood hits the sheet. And when the blood hits the sheet, that actually is a contract. And if either one of them want to divorce, they have to come back to the father of the bride, and they have to sit down in front of him. And the father of the bride will pull out a big old sheet that has their blood on it. And he will set it down on the table, and he'll say, tell me why this covenant must be broken. All that happens in marriage. All that happens before you lay down. Just about all, right? Except the last few seconds, right? You said the difference between the rebellious wife and the prepared wise wife. Mm-hmm. And how you doing, Sister Tia? Praise God for you, right? All these things are there. So when we talk about marriage, a lot of us come from a thought process of dating. And dating, hey man, shoot, I might have a way out one day. That's the mindset of dating. Yeah, I mean, I guess, until they do this. No, marriage is until death do us part, and we plan on even seeing each other in heaven, when heaven meets earth. This is for the long haul. Can't tell me no different. If something happens that's crazy that makes me even have to consider divorce, it's going to have to be crazy. It's going to have to be something that's really crazy. It's going to have to be something that's, it has to be. It has to be something on a certain level. That's why there's only, you don't just be tossing around the divorce word. Persons who date toss around divorce word like, crap, man, you know what? You're not doing it. I'm not feeling you. I'm not feeling you. Well, you're not listening. Well, you never listen. Well, you know what? We should just go ahead and split up. Or you know what? Fine, whatever. That's what you talk about all the time. Fine. This time I'm serious. And you hear people say, this time I'm serious. Because how many times you done said it? If the shoe fits, wear it. If it don't, take it off. Right? How many times you done said it? How many times you done said these same things? You leaving. You leaving because this. You leaving because that. You da. Right? You say it so much that you don't even think about what that does. And you know that's stress. Your body doesn't understand, you being stressed out because you got a test tomorrow, or you being stressed out because there's a bear chasing you. Your body has no clue. It doesn't know the difference. Your body just stressed. And here you are continuing to tell somebody how you're going to do divorce. Now, do you know that divorce, and I'm not saying there's no reason for divorce, but hear what I'm saying. Do you know that divorce, it comes from a word that literally is saying to betray? If somebody abandoned their post during wartime, we would call that divorce. They offed people when they did that, right? You say, is it okay to divorce a spouse just because they're an unbeliever? No. They still have to do something as far as lawfully. See, this is one of the reasons why marriage is important, because we might be committing ourselves to somebody who isn't there. So you might have not been righteous in your marriage, but if you're in an unrighteous marriage, but you're married, the Most High says in His Word that is the behavior of the non-believing spouse that can change the believing spouse. I'm sorry, the behavior of the believing spouse that can change the non-believing spouse's behavior. So what is your behavior? Is your behavior going to go into, okay, I'm going to be righteous, I'm going to be holy? Now, it doesn't mean you're a doormat. So if they're doing stuff that's wild, once again, there are things that are up for debate. If they're, for example, putting hands on you, we ain't saying stay. Right? The Bible even tells you that a husband would never put his hands on you. It says that in Ephesians chapter 5. Everybody likes wives submit to your own husbands. Well, guess what it says in Ephesians chapter 5 as well? It says that no man hateth his own flesh. Now, I was talking about kingdom men, right? The world is different. But no man has ever hated his own flesh, but he loveth it and cherisheth it. So he would never hurt his wife, right? Or a lot of you, obviously adultery is one. We forget that fornication is actually what it talks about as well in the Sermon on the Mount. On the Sermon on the Mount, that's Christ Himself, follower of the law Himself wrapped in flesh. Right, so there are ways, and there's other things as well, right? But you would bring it before a group, you would bring it before a council to make a decision. If we were doing it, we don't do that because our marriages belong to the state. So since the state, who's not really concerned about you having a long marriage, they just want to make sure that they can have you involve your marriage into them, put it under them in the state. And so therefore, if you get a divorce or you want, they just want a kickback, they want money. They'll make sure you get some, but they're going to get some too. So so you can divorce, but just because they're a non-believer is not enough. Right now, if there's other stuff to it, maybe we'd have to talk offline, to see exactly what's going on, because some stuff is probably not for this platform or our business, so you never know what's going on, and there's, and I want to be respectful even of whether he's a believer or not. I'd be respectful of your husband. Okay, can you marry outside the nation? If not, is that reason for divorce? Well, we're talking about nationality. That's a great question. If we're talking about nationality, nation building, we should have never got married to anybody who is not of Yahweh. Somebody was even bringing up circumcision earlier. Circumcision basically just is a representation of the law. right? We who are circumcised is a way of reminding persons that we follow the law, right? So um, we're not, but in Israel it's important. No woman of Israel was ever supposed to even be married to somebody who was not circumcised, because they were supposed to follow the law. Right? No man of Israel was ever supposed to be married to somebody outside of Israel, because they need to be a person to follow the law. Therefore, if you get married to somebody, they have to become your nation. That's the mandate. A lot of persons want you to just think about law bad, grace good or whatever, right? But the reason why we did that is because they're supposed to be persons that believe what we believe. Even when the guy forced Dinah, our worded Dinah, and forced her down, um, that was something when they came to him and they said, you guys become circumcised. When we talking about it, it was like, yeah, that's what was supposed to happen before you forced our little sister. Right? And you weren't supposed to force her in the first place. And you were supposed to come and talk to our father Israel before all this happened. Right? But since you didn't, if you decide to get circumcised and everybody in your nation does, you're ultimately saying you're going to respect our laws, respect our ways, and you're going to follow what Yah says. And so if that's what you're going to do, then yeah, now they then wiped them out, and that was a consequence for their actions. It's kind of that thing where you can call somebody an N-word, but be ready for them consequences. It's like, they didn't see it coming. They got blindsided. But that's what was supposed to happen from the jump. If you have an interest in our sister, first of all, let's see if that's even lawful. Secondly, if it is lawful, then you got to follow protocol. So we're supposed to make sure that before we get married. However, if we are married to persons, and here's part of the issue too. See, we entered into covenant. You got to be careful about these covenants you get into. See, Yah honors covenant, right? In certain way, obviously certain things are evil, but hear what I'm saying. Yah, get the context. Yahweh honors covenant. So if you, right, and how you doing, Nacha? And so if you are in covenant with somebody, and now you maybe have learned different, right? Then, and they're still doing what they used to do, and they thought you were going to be together based off of what you first met up in, it's not necessarily a righteous thing to be like, well, I've learned the truth, and you don't want to be in truth. Now, once again, if they're doing things that are like they wilding, like they're doing stuff way outside, way out of the pocket, then we have to deal with that. We might have to separate, or might even have to look into possibly getting divorced, right? If there's adultery there, if there's fornication is a false image of marriage. So there's certain things that, yeah, we would make sure that we would look into and we would pray about. And then as a society, this is the way it was supposed to be. I know persons don't do this anymore, but we would then evaluate as a group, as a family, and try to figure out, what needs to be done. And ultimately there might be a decision that's set based upon the word that goes, yeah, you might not, you know, and it still would be your decision. Everybody might say, okay, I guess divorce is there, and you have a decision to make for yourself, right? But our goal is, as much as possible, is reconciliation. As much as it's humanly possible, the goal is reconciliation. That's what the goal should be at all times, is reconciliation, right? And so to reconcile, just like you've been reconciled back to the Father, right? Hopefully they would be reconciled back as well through your example, through your beliefs, through the Word. Oh, okay, Northeast India. All right, cool. Well, welcome in, right? So we have to look at those things, and yeah. So marriage, it gets deep. Now, somebody had asked earlier about divorce. I don't know if you're a widow. So I get the widow. That's what it was. So if you are a widow, I guess the question is, if you're a widow, are you allowed to be able to be married again? Some person say you can't get married again. The Bible doesn't say that you can't get married again. Matter of fact, there's some things that it says you should make sure that you go back to being chaste and make sure you're preparing yourself to be married to the Most High. But also there might be an opportunity for you to be married to somebody again. Matter of fact, there are plenty of persons in the Bible. There's plenty even instances where we have even, like the Messiah, one instance, the Messiah's question about a widow and her being remarried again. So there's not an issue with remarriage if you are a widow. There are some persons that try to use scripture to hymn sisters and be like they belong to somebody even after death. This is actually a very unfortunate Shemitic thing that has kind of become traditional in many places, even in the Muslim faith, but in other faiths as well, where somebody dies and you can't marry again because you somehow are your husband's property. Um, right? That's not necessarily so. I would say if you are a widow, make sure that you get in tune with the Most High. Make sure that you're cleansing yourself. Make sure that you're carrying yourself as chaste. Right? The word virgin doesn't only mean because you haven't had your hymen broken. So be chaste. A lot of times, even when women lose their husbands and men lose their wives, there are things that lust, like because we used to have relations and we could do certain things to kind of, you know, get past, we were allowed to do things with physical urges because we had a partner. Now we don't have a partner anymore. So some persons begin after divorce or after losing a spouse, they begin to kind of do some things that you're not really supposed to do. We'll just say it like that, behind closed doors. So there's some things that, it might take a little bit to cleanse yourself and be ready. But you're always to be ready to be a wife or a husband for that regard, because we're all supposed to be married to the Most High, right? And if we're trained correctly, we should be able to go back to what we were trained in, right? So if we're trained correctly, we should be able to get back to what we were trained in. Oh, Joe, no, that's fine. That's somebody from India over there. We have persons like that are part of SOC right now, like in Pakistan, and trying to see some stuff set up in India. Not this particular person, I don't know who they are, but they're coming into the knowledge first of all of the Bible. A lot of them leaving Hinduism, a lot of them leaving Muslim faith, a lot of leaving a lot of stuff in their learning. So yeah, somebody might still use the JC stuff or use God or different things like that. He's probably somebody who a lot of persons who connect or trying to connect through some of this stuff. A lot of times they're even doing so through the prism of, a lot of them are doing so through the prism of trying to have somebody to be under even. So, we have an evangelist right now over in Pakistan, and he's, trying to learn and trying to grow. He still uses JC and stuff like that from time to time. He knows about, Yeshua and stuff like that, but he's learning. So, if that's something that they learned, they came into the knowledge of, they've been baptized under all that stuff. A lot of them, believe it or not, actually watch our stuff and come on in and like, oh, okay, like, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. So he has an opportunity to learn. Yeah, I don't think he meant any harm by that. Right. Now, cats from America, when they do the Christian exceptionalism thing, you can kind of hear a different tone in their voice. But I think he's all right? But yeah, so we have to recognize and realize, what's going on, and what a lot of persons are dealing with, and they don't understand how marriage works. They don't understand how the Most High looks at it. A lot of persons even look, like, as I was kind of alluding to with the question from earlier, a lot of persons are looking at things and how to belong, or we look at each other as a possession, right? Right? We look at each other as a possession. What is it? He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not on the Son. Um, okay, sure. I'm not sure what all those verses have to do with what we're saying, because we believe those things. I mean, if your whole thing is to say that I'm not saying Jesus, now this person is somebody we can look at, because if your whole thing is to say I'm not saying Jesus, well, that's not his name. And so if you say you believe on the Son, then make sure you say his name. But other than that, everything you said we believe in. I mean, I don't understand. Well, I do understand what you're trying to do, but it is what it is. So, but yeah, so a lot of persons, once again, we don't recognize and comprehend what's actually going on. So a lot of us have a really bad place and bad thought process concerning marriage. But if we're talking about marriage outside the nation or outside the belief system or outside the culture, if you have an opportunity to not do it from the jump, we shouldn't. Right? If you're somebody who married and then is coming to the knowledge of who Christ is, if your spouse is not doing something that's worthy of divorce, part of your responsibility is to minister to them. Just like the Bible says, if one desires, what is it, 1 Timothy chapter 3? If one desires the office of a pastor, he desireth an excellent work. But first, let him be somebody who, we can't say disobeys the law. right? We can't find anything. It's not easy to be like, oh, you're always messing up. And so you let your reputation be sound, clean. But then number two, let him be the husband of one wife. And then we keep looking at qualifications, right? Let him not be given the wine, and let him take care of his children, right? Let him take care of his house. If we're going to be a pastor, right, we should make sure that we can pastor our homes, right? So it's kind of the same thing. It starts at home, right? You said you're glad, you're patient, you saw your husband come in. Praise Yah, Amen. And Brother Torino is an excellent man, right? But like so that's part of the process. Is like, yeah, like, don't just throw in the towel, or let's not just be like, oh, well, this person is bad and they're never gonna get it. Like, our part of our responsibility, in the same way, by the way, we usually would do with others, in the same manner, let's take time out to it takes time. Let's take time out to let our spouses become who they're supposed to be. Right? It takes time. And it's time, well worth investing if you're doing so as far as with a kingdom mind. Right? It takes time out. It's worth investing in. It's worth taking time out to see what's going on, time out to be able to, to show them this type of love, and time out to even allow them to grow, as we had to, and as we still have to. There's many different things we're trying to grow in. I'm not perfect at all. I'm a great husband. I say that not, I say I'm a great husband because the Bible says if I do what he does, what Christ does, then I should be considered to be a great husband. I consider myself to be a great husband. Am I perfect? No. Well, aren't you? Right? And am I going to continue to be greater? Yes. And am I going to make a mistake? Probably going to make some mistakes today. I will repent, and I will be better, and I will ask for forgiveness, and I will receive forgiveness from my wife, who has forgiven me for a lot of different weird, nasty, disgusting things. If we just be honest, I know we don't like to admit that we have faults, but yeah, we have faults too. And so just because I'm a pastor, just because I'm teaching others how to be it, doesn't mean that I'm, that I don't fall short too. Speaking of which, how you doing, babe? My wife is on the Honorable Maya. I'm sorry, excuse me. The Honorable Alma. As always, check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. How you doing, Juan Andre? And welcome to everybody on all the different platforms. If I miss you, charge it to my head, not to my heart. Until waited 20 years, yeah. Well, there are probably some things though. Actually, well, we talked a little bit, So there's some things where he's probably shown growth in this, and look at this. But yeah, if we come into the knowledge of who the Most High really is, it's part of being a living sacrifice. When you sign up for the death do his part, yeah. And part of the death that you should be worried about too. We don't talk about this enough when we do our when we get together and praise Yah. I know there's some of you even doing some marital or what do you call it? Not rededications. What do you call it when you redo your marital vows? I guess redoing your marital vows, renewing your vows. There we go. One of the things that we don't talk about in all this stuff that's happening, and the persons we're marrying now, and the persons that we're having time to be able to sow into, I've noticed is like we don't talk about a part of death, which is death. You have to die to yourself. Oh, is that difficult sometimes? Oh, beloved, hear me. I get it. You have to die to yourself. There are things that you used to do and you used to love to do and you still wish you could do, but it's not about you. And so you don't get to do some of those things, not because they're bad, but because it's not part of what Yah has for your family. And it hurts sometimes, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. There's some sacrifices, right? You a living sacrifice, which is holy and acceptable, and your reasonable service. There's some stuff that, yeah, you know what? I used to blah, blah, but I got babies now. I can't. I heard somebody talking about this the other day. One of the new things, and this is really sad, but it is what it is. One of the new things that seems to have happened, one of the things that's taking place a lot more now is there's this weird behavior where persons are going out and they're making videos and they're talking about how they really wish they didn't have children, and their children are gonna see this one day if they don't see it the same day, or their spouse is gonna see it. But they out here is this weird thing the person's been getting in front of camera, right? You all on candid camera, and you out here talking about, yeah, those of you who don't have marriages and don't have children, don't have relationships, I'm just here to tell you, ain't no need to have them, man. This stuff sucks. And you're like, what are y'all doing out here? Oh, fasting. Okay, thank you. Appreciate you. I'll come to you right next. Right? And it's like, what y'all doing out here? Why would you even say? Why would you even say that? But it's because like they didn't comprehend what they're getting into. But I get this part of it though, where there's guys where ultimately, like, for example, if I was so-called single, right? We just talked about earlier that that's not really a kingdom thing, because if you're in a family, how are you single? How are you alone? But nevertheless, I get what they mean by if they were so-called single, they wouldn't, if you wanted to be homeless, you just be like, if you didn't like the job and the job was something that's really messing you up, and you were like, well, you know what, you outweigh the pros versus the cons, and you say, well, is it really so much a con that I'll be out there in the street? I don't mind living in my car. It's just me. That's different than, oh, okay, I got these babies, so even if I don't like what I'm doing, I got to do what I'm doing. I get that, right? But a lot of persons haven't been trained on what it is. First of all, societally, even think about just making sure these babies are receiving their inheritance by age 22. So instead of you trying to give them a piece of something after you're gone and letting them inherit debt, imagine them inheriting stuff that allows them to actually make decisions based off of wealth. What did you say? You said you saw one where a woman was taking her baby to school for the last time she was 7. Mm, yeah, I'd have to see the video. I don't know exactly what the context is of it. Oh, you saw that one too. How you doing, Brother Alex? Yeah, so we have to recognize these things that are going on and realize that, like, part of what we're doing is being a living sacrifice. And guess what, husbands? Guess who your first child, I'm talking about spiritual child, right? I'm not saying you got to treat it like a baby, but guess what? Guess who your first spiritual child is? If you're going to have these spiritual children, if you're going to have this ministry, if you're going to talk and preach to all these other persons, if you're going to be the patriarch of your household and have everybody listening to you, well, then guess what? Oh, it's because she didn't want her. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's sad. You know, it's really sad. And there can be different things that happen to make people come to those decisions. I don't agree with it, but, it's sad. But this is kind of what we live in, where persons have not honored it. As much as we don't think about it, we think it's just like, and the Bible does tell us persons will be without natural affection. That's 2 Timothy chapter 3. Before it says 2 Timothy 4, I charge you therefore, before Elohim and before all those present, all that stuff that you present, that you preach the word, be instant in season, not of season. Before that, it tells us that, yeah, there'll be persons who are coming up without natural affection. Affection is not natural, but once again, this talks about the disregarding of marriage. We don't think that it's really important to be married. We don't, like, look at even like some of the movies. I forget what movie it is. There's some movie where it literally has like 7 or 8 couples that are supposed to be intertwined. I think they're in Europe. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe they're in the United States of America, and they're supposed to be intertwined. And all of it's about like one cheating on the other, who's cheating on the other, who's cheating on the other, who's cheating on the other. I was watching some. Matter of fact, I still haven't seen the movie. I've seen more of it now. I can't really do, you know. We're not going to do it as a watch party, just because I can't really do gory. I don't mind watching rated R stuff depending on what the rated R stuff is. But and right now we're doing something else. We have 2 things planned, but we probably won't watch Sinners, just because I'm just being honest. I can't watch the whole thing because I can't do gory. I just can't. I'm trying. I'm trying. I got flashbacks. To be honest, I get PTSD. Some when I see some of that stuff, but even before then, I can't really. I can't do it. I've been trying. I'm trying, right? But I was able to watch it, pieces of it, where you know how on YouTube they'll do like compilations of a whole bunch of persons watching something. So I watched like, and I've actually seen other pieces that kind of help me fill in. So in a sense, I guess I've watched a lot of it. I just can't watch some of the grotesque things. You said it's important we need to be in place as wife and husband in the kingdom. I'm on for sure, right? However, they had a what is it? They oh yeah. So I watched enough to where I saw pieces and praise God. They did at least a lot of it. Most of it was not gory. So I'm thankful and grateful. At least I got to see that or whatever. But but when we were going through different things, or I'm sorry, we. It feels like we because all these persons are watching and you're watching them watch it. But anyways, when they were watching the stuff and they were going through the stuff in Sinners, even in Sinners, it struck me how much unfaithfulness. You know what I'm saying? Like how many persons were married to like that one girl, um, who the guy who survives, the guitar player who survives and lives. He's the only one that survives as a human being after the whole experience, I believe. And he named the thing after him, that the girl was coming into. I guess it's his place or whatever. And he still plays music as an old man. And he still got those scars from getting his face slashed and all that. He names the place after the girl, but that girl wasn't. That girl was married, and he knew she was married, and he was. Remember, they called him Preacher Boy, right? And Preacher Boy, his father was a pastor telling him, stay away. Now, maybe it's too far. You can't play blues music per se, but he was like, stay away from that music, and you're gonna bring the devil with you, and blah blah blah. And I actually applaud them for doing that because Ryan Coogler, in persons trying to, which he was bringing a whole bunch of weird stuff in and spiritual stuff in. I'll applaud that part to where a lot of times we just dismiss that as being like, oh, so and so's father's tripping. Somebody came out the church, or they came out the kingdom, they came out the Bible, and now they're not Bible believers, and everybody tries to make them feel bad. But hey, they needed to come out, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's better to be spiritual. But his father actually gives a strong warning at the beginning. Hey, leave that stuff alone. Use your gift for the Most High. If you're not going to use it for the Most High, realize that you're going to. I think he said you're going to attract those devils or those demons or something like that. Not knowing about vampires or whatever, but he attracted those. Basically, it was his music that the vampire, right, the person who was the Irish guy who was coming over and found out about the KKK persons and found out about the juke joint and found out about all this stuff, and he was attracted. He kept telling him, "I need you. I need your music. I need what you have to be able to." To bring it out, to bring that stuff out, right? And so in that I do applaud like the fact that they actually made it a point to show those different things in there, right? But and throughout that whole movie, really, if you're looking at it, there's a lot of persons, there are some marriages and some stuff, relationships that's supposed to be staying strong, but there's a lot of stuff where persons are not, you can see it's not without natural affection. Because I was watching these persons react, and they're like, "Oh, isn't she married?" But then it became, "Oh, it's so beautiful at the end that he put her name up and this and that. And oh, it's so beautiful that they had this sex scene and he was giving her oral in the room and that his cousin is watching it." And I'm like, this is not funny. That's not like, that's not cool. If that, see, we had this weird thing too without natural affection. If it's not happening to you, we act like it's okay. Right? This is why we got to get back to truth. We got to get back to a society where if it affects one, it affects all. Right? Like that's not a cool scene. But there's a lot of movies that come out like that where it's better, where somebody's supposed to be getting married to somebody else, but hey, it's better that they went ahead and got with somebody. That's the Titanic. That's the story of the Titanic. And I'm not saying dude wasn't great, was a great dude. Matter of fact, he struck her, right? Right? But I'm saying whatever the guy's name is that struck Rose, that was supposed to be her. But I'm just saying when we look at a lot of this stuff, a lot of the stuff is this person is with somebody else. Something about Mary, famous comedy, with somebody else. Maybe he'll be able to get her. you know, like we have a lot of different things, a lot of the Nollywood stuff. Those who are into the African movies, West African movies, Nollywood, Nigerian stuff. A lot of that stuff is somebody belonging to somebody else. We don't have natural affection. We don't think about these things as far as marriage and stuff like that. So yeah, without natural affection, truce breakers, right? High-minded, lovers of themselves more than lovers of the Most High. They follow their own lusts. From such turn away. From such repent. That's all in 1 Timothy chapter 3. Salah. Okay. Um, Give me a second. So we are going to get ready to go into the next one. Next question. Thank you for being patient with me. Give me a second. Okay. Fasting. Okay, so about fasting, the difference between 7 day, 21 day, and 40 days fasting. So, spiritually, I mean, fasting is something that the longer one fasts, the more you're talking about separation. To fast, even the word fast, remember to fast means separation. So if somebody's faster than you, right, that means that you actually separate from them, right, at a greater rate of speed, right? So if we're fasting, um, we're going away at a greater rate of speed. That's all we're really saying. That's all we're really talking about. So the longer one fasts, or the longer one goes away at a greater rate of speed, the longer one goes away, or the longer one is separated. Whether we're talking about fasting of anything, fasting from pornography, fasting from lust, fasting from cursing, fasting from leaven, right? The longer we fast, the longer we separate, right? There are things that come. There are benefits, and there's also, even in those benefits, there's things we have to work through. They get really difficult. If we're talking about the medical things that happen, the longer you fast, I don't know if I'm necessarily the greatest person to speak on all those things. Obviously, it works better for you. The longer you fast, the more your body begins to feed on things. I would say before fasting, by the way, make sure, just like we talked about earlier with marriage and stuff, before fasting, make sure you're preparing yourself for it. Right? Just like a woman shouldn't wait to have children, and once she's having, excuse me, once she's going through morning sickness, which is just simply a result of her not having enough in her because she wasn't prepared. She should already have those things in her, and even after she has a child, she should continue to make sure that she has, a certain amount of vitamins, vital minerals, right? Vital minerals, vitamins, right? Nutrients, etc. You know, Same thing about fasting. A lot of us will go into fasting and we're not prepared. You should prepare your body and prepare your mind and prepare yourself, and even prepare yourself as far as covenant prayer and stuff like that. Like, you're about to go into a place to where you're not being fed things that the flesh needs. And so the soul is still attached to the flesh while being attached to the spirit. And you're going to have to use the spirit and soul to be able to try and keep certain things in subjection. It hasn't been, and one of the reasons you're fasting is because it has not been a habit for you to allow your spirit to have so much opportunity to keep the flesh in subjection. Your flesh has not had an opportunity to be able to stay away from something like food and eating and things of that nature. So what I would make sure that persons recognize and realize is that, in the forgive me, that first of all, you prepare yourself. So prepare yourself. So you're talking about 7 day, 21 day. First of all, even in just 36 hours, if you were to able to not eat, your body starts to reset. And what happens, if I go through some of the timeline stuff, in the first 3 days, it's going to be the most difficult, because the first 3 days, your body is saying, I need something to eat physically, right? So that's going to be your toughest time. You might even need to have an accountability partner or somebody who's fasting with you, or maybe, if you're married, your husband, your wife can be somebody that's allowed to tell you you can't eat, right? Turns down your plate or goes through the process with you, because it's difficult. Right, I found myself saying I'm going to fast, and then before I know it, it's I'm saying I'm going to do a 10-day fast, and first day I'm not thinking about it because just naturally I eat at this time or I do whatever, right? So maybe you want to put on the calendar, schedule it that, whatever, right? But even preparing yourself for it, also preparing yourself from what you eat. You want to start eating less foods before you fast. Not necessarily eating less in quantity, even though you might want to do that as well, but you might want to get down to where you start only eating one type of food. So you say, okay, I'm going to erase certain types of meat from the diet. If you're eating, beef and lamb, and chicken and turkey and all different types of stuff or whatever, maybe you do. We shouldn't be doing pork at all, but whatever. Definitely get that out of there as soon as you can. But you said you've been fasting and you lose weight as well. Yeah, it works, right? And it also resets the body as well. So like you need to fast or remove certain foods. So okay, I'm only going to eat instead of 4 different types of meat. Maybe I take it down to 2. Then I take that down to 1. Then I say okay, 0 meat. All right, now I'm still doing fruit and what we call vegetables, right? Which fruit is the ones with seed, but vegetable or vegetable really just means the way that one prepares the stuff. But fruit is stuff that has seed. A lot of persons usually let fruit or fruit be the last thing in the diet. So okay, I'm going to take out the veggies, right? So I'm going to do less veggies. So I'm not going to do as many. Maybe I only do broccoli and peas and carrots. Okay, now I'm just going to do peas and carrots. Okay, now I'm just going to do carrots. All right, now I'm done with the vegetables. Now all I'm doing is fruit. All right, now I start having less quantity, right, of food, but also I'm going to have less fruit. So I'm going to have less types of fruit, and then I'm going to just have, whittle it down to where I'm just eating pears or just eating blueberries or just eating whatever, right? But certain things to get my body used to, I'm already fasting. You see, like I'm already in the process of preparing my whole environment and my whole life. Now, when I get down to it, and of course I'm drinking a bunch of water as well, right? And during the process, you're going to need to do that while you're fasting. So that's why a lot of persons call it a water fast. You're not fasting from water. There are dry fasts, and you probably don't want to do that any more than 1 to 2 days. And please be careful the type of water, right? I wouldn't, as much as you guys see me do sparkling water, I wouldn't suggest sparkling water because sparkling water is acidic. You need to make sure it has other things. At least most, not all, most sparkling water are acidic, so you need to make sure you have something with minerals in it, or that you're putting something in it, or drinking, something in it that makes sure that it remains alkaline. But especially during the fasting period, you probably just want to do plain, not plain water, but you get what I'm saying, non-sparkling water, non-carbonated water. You take that water, and you then are drinking it, right? And some persons do still do like lemon and lime with it. That's electrolytes basically. Some persons still do take salt with it. I would say it's probably better to try and do it without those things, but make sure you do those things as well, right? So, well, yes, if you're doing goat milk and stuff in the process, and so it can help with the fast as well, right? But so once you get to the point to where you have the water, right? And you can go find out more about that through Jacob's link and all that stuff, Jacob's regeneration. Amen. But once you have the water and you have all these different things that are going on, and you get to this place of water, you're going to find out so basically once you're taking out food, sorry, the first few days are going to be the toughest because your body wants to eat, eat, eat. After that, your body realizes I'm not getting anything, right? Your body's freaking out. And by the way, it's a natural response, right? Your body is it feels like it's under attack because your body is under the thought process of I'm supposed to eat. I'm supposed to eat. Some of us eat like 7 times a day if you include snacks and all the other stuff, right? So your body's like, I'm supposed to be having something all the time. So that's why you should make sure you prepare your body, because a lot of you just go, I'm going to fast, and you can do it. Some of you have great mental the mental fortitude to be able to do it, and you can cut it off. But that's why there's so much pain and stuff like that. Plus, you're dealing with parasites a lot of times too. So the parasites a lot of times want to eat more than you. So the first few days are going to be the toughest because you're going to be going through a lot of stuff where your body's like, hey, where's this food? Or even parasites going to be like, hey, what's going on? Your parasites will attack your brain or will attack certain parts of your body and say, yo, if we don't eat, everything going to die. Right? Now, you'll make it through. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. You will make it through. But your body's things in your body are going to try to, you're going to be having conversation. Right? You're going to be having conversation inside your body, right? So once you make it past those first few days, then it gets better because your body just starts saying, all right, well, I know there's stuff in here I can eat in the body. Like it knows there's stuff it can eat off of. It will start to eat things that actually should have been disregarded or should have been digested before, but because maybe it didn't have the magnesium it needed, to be able to digest food, or maybe it hadn't gone through the process of just, resting enough, or because your stomach has never actually shrunk enough and shrunk long enough to where the body knows, oh, okay, nothing's going on in there, or so your body will start eating off of itself over time. So it'll start eating things like plaque around your heart, right? Plaque around your teeth, right? It'll start eating out disease. It'll after a while, and you'll come in phases. Some days, I think you get up to like day 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there, and you'll start to be in extreme pain again. Push through. Keep drinking water. By the way, after a while, even your urine, right? You'll see that your body is eating and drinking stuff and getting rid of waste that's been built up. So you'll see your urine will become black, right? Like literally, like you'll see some persons, general. Like I don't know if I made black, but it was extremely dark, right? But your urine will come out. And by the way, you can even check on this stuff, check on your stools, check on stuff like that to see, study what you're supposed to be looking for, even in your stool from time to time, right? Please make sure you flush so that the other person don't see some of this stuff, because not only will it be nasty, it'll be sometimes parasites and stuff coming out of you. But there's a lot of stuff in there, and your body has not had a chance to process it. You'll see, and there have been persons that even talk about how they'll see things coming out of their body that they haven't even eaten that for years, and it wasn't even like digested, right? Like, how McDonald's food used to be and stuff, or I guess it still is, um, where you can put it on the counter and it just sits there, and you can come back later, and even though it's hard, and you can't chew it, and you can knock somebody out by hitting them in the head with it, but it looks like the same. There are persons who literally are like, I could tell what I ate. Yeah, corn, especially certain types of corn too, right? But corn, stuff like that. But I'm just saying there's certain things in your body that your body has never gotten rid of, and you'd be surprised. But also, it's going to show itself in your urine. Your urine's going to change color, stuff like that. You keep on trying to push through there. Once you get through there, you'll have a little bit of stuff here and there. Make sure you're drinking water. One of the reasons you're drinking, some people just keep downing water, and make sure you're using some kind of, maybe here or there, a whole bunch of, some, I won't say a whole bunch, but some minerals, things like that. But also too, pinch of salt here or there is not gonna hurt. And especially if you get headaches, the headaches are really going to come through dehydration, not just through hunger, but dehydration. So salt will help with some of that stuff. And also, since you're not dealing with as much cholesterol, the brain's going to have a little bit of issues coming through. But you'll find that you actually think a lot different during the fast, and after a few after a few days, even, you'll start to be like more aware of things than you ever have been before, because even some stuff that's in your brain needs to be digested. Even some stuff as far as heavy metals that are in the brain, even some stuff as far as plastic that's in our brain. We don't have time to let these things go through. By the way, I'm gonna try it. I know there's the bath and the bathing stuff or whatever. I'm gonna let you guys know if anybody's tried it. If you know which ones are better, I've been doing some research, but just let me know. This is not for fasting. This just kind of hit my mind as far as the heavy metals thing. If anybody knows any information about the stuff that you use to get all that stuff out your feet, not just the bath. I know about the bath, but even the tape that you can use. I'm gonna try and go heavy on some stuff real quick and try some stuff out. Right. So you guys have been doing a lot of stuff and helping me to learn a lot of stuff in my personal health walk, as well as Elder Alma, obviously. But I'm going to give it a try. Right. And there's a couple that I've been looking at. But if you have any suggestions, or if you come across and if you use any of that stuff, let me know. Right. And I'll let you guys know what I find out. I'm going to try that during some of this removing the leaven. I'm going to see about some of those things. Right. But you'll see there's a lot of stuff that's in you, right? Including, we forget, like a lot of deodorants you're using have metals in them, right? You're getting aluminum and stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff in our bodies that are that need to be gotten rid of. So your body will actually begin, once there's no food, it starts to look around for anything else. So it'll get rid of all the waste that should have been gotten rid of, and things that should not be living in your body. It's healthy to have a certain amount of levels of things, but your body will go and look for things that it should not be there, that's extra, etc. Right? It will also focus on your fat, right, which is great for visceral fat and things that are around your organs and stuff. I can't ever say this word. Somebody knows what I'm trying to say. Subcutaneous. I always mess up the word. I can't say it. Whatever that is, right? That type of fat. But it gets rid of things that you don't need, right? And your body will get to a state to where it actually, now you have to watch yourself. Some person try to go past 40, and you start getting to 50, 60 days. You got to be careful, because your body gets to a place to where it can't eat again, and it'll just keep eating itself. Thank you. Subcutaneous fat. I don't know why I can't. Subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat. I'm not, but you have to be careful once you get to a certain level of doing that, because your body will then say, I just don't eat anymore. Your digestive system will just say, we don't do that anymore. And so it'll be difficult to live, obviously, after that, right? You said the longest you fasted was 10 days and drinking too much water without electrolytes stopped you. So there is something about the electrolytes piece. And by the way, the water that persons would have normally drank would have had electrolytes. So when we talk about, somebody fasting for 40 days in the biblical day, if you drink water out of a stream, electrolytes. If you drink water out of a copper bottle, right, copper thermos, we would call it today, electrolytes. If you drink water, you know, that was coming out of different things that were, that there were trees and different things that had fruit and stuff, and guess growing out of them, electrolytes, right? So there's different things that we could have today. So yeah, if you drink water, with electrolytes in them, that's not cheating, right? Some persons want to go straight water. More power to you. I would also say, please be careful. I guess I have to say this since we're talking about it once again. This is for educational purposes only, spiritual purposes only. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a herbalist. I am married to one who is very, very talented and has a lot of information. I believe her to be one of the greatest herbalists to ever live. That being said, I would say the greatest, but she would not say that. That being said, I am not any of these things. So I'm not, I just want to make sure I say that legally and lawfully. Those things being said, yeah, you need to be careful with certain types of water, especially waters that strip you. If you don't know about the Dasani water, that water is designed to strip you to make you thirsty. So you'll go and drink more of it. So if you're drinking water like that during that season, or if you're drinking water out of plastic, I mean, it's better than having no water, but now you're flooding your body with plastic. So it's going to make it more difficult for you in life down the road, even if it cleanses you in the moment. Be careful, please. For those of you who don't know about, somebody help me. Water is like stripped basically of any nutrients or stuff in it. They use it for babies. What is it called? Starts with the letter D. What is that? What am I saying? And you're not supposed to. Well, I guess you give it to babies as well, which is kind of interesting too. But they use it in formula stuff like that. Distilled, right? Be careful with distilled water. Distilled water. Okay. How you doing, Jay? J-Day. Be careful with distilled. How you doing, Brother Jacob? Be careful with distilled water because it rips away nutrients. All right. If you cleanse, some persons cleanse by taking distilled water, right? Which is okay, for a hot second. And how you doing, Ashley? Thanks for being on. And QRST playlist. Thanks for being on. Right. So be careful. There are persons who take distilled, right? But just be careful, like if you're doing that constantly, because you're ripping away nutrients, right? Especially if you're fasting and you're not having anything else come in to replace, basically. Be extremely careful with that. There are persons who have passed away not knowing and have taken distilled water for like 2-3 days and they're not here anymore. So distilled water is very powerful. Filtered water depends on what filtered means, because filtered can mean a bunch of stuff, but filtered water is better than distilled, for sure, right? But just be careful. Like I said, there are certain sparkling waters, like I said, they're actually on time, but they have to have certain types of electrolytes and things in them. But sparkling water overall is acidic. So if you're going to do sparkling water, you got to make sure that it's got stuff in there that makes sure that it's alkaline. Okay. Sparkling water is refreshing because of certain things it does, especially if it actually has, vitamins and minerals in it. But you got to make sure that you're doing something to make it alkaline. But over time, so the longer you fast, the longer you separate from food, if we're just speaking even on the physical side of things, the longer I separate myself from food, there are some benefits in that my body's going to search for food. Your body's going to even search for the fat, it's going to search for things that don't belong, it's going to search even for fake sugar, whatever it is, it's going to eat whatever it can. So you're going to see your body go, obviously you're going to lose weight, you're going to see a lot of things happen with that. One of the things you have to be ready for at the end though is, once again, be careful, right, that you're not going too long, look for certain signs, or just give yourself like a certain amount of time. Like say, if it's going to be 40 days, let it be 40. Don't push the envelope, especially if you're, maybe you can consult a doctor or somebody during the process. But if it's just 40, like maybe you want to make it 40 only, Because if you don't know, for some of you, it'd be too late. You'll just be like, oh, I'm just pushing, or I'm just used to not eating. Oh man, I don't feel like I'll ever have to eat again. Like, be careful about that, because what will happen is then your body's going to atrophy, and it's going to eat your muscles, and it's going to begin to eat off, some of your organs, right? And then basically you're going to, and your digestive system will be done. Your body's not going to be able to eat. No matter how much they hook you up to something, you're pretty much going to continue to pass away. A tapper with a little Morton salt and lemon. Yeah, and Morton salt, especially if it has the iodine, because many persons don't actually take iodine in, or have iodine-rich foods. So yeah, if you get some of that with iodine, that might help during the process as well, especially for those of you who are dealing with thyroid issues. That's why most of you are dealing with the thyroid issues, is because of lack of iodine. Right, most of you, not all of you, allegedly. Anyways, though, that's all I'm gonna say on that, because I'm not gonna pretend that I got all the answers on any of this. We do have, and I didn't say anything earlier, I apologize. We do have WhatsApp available. And let me make sure I got my Bluetooth on. So if you have the WhatsApp number, it's not the 2025 number, it's the 2028 number. So if you do want to call in, if you have a question, comment, or concern, you can feel free to do so, and we'll try to answer your questions as best as we can. Let me make sure. Let me see if this is connected to the Bluetooth. Sorry, I didn't hear the sound. Okay. All right, so if somebody does call into that number, we should be able to answer your call. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, if you'd like to call in through TikTok, I'm going to try my best. We didn't try it yet. We might have some feedback, because I'm kind of using the same device. If you'd like to try and call through Facebook Messenger, we might be able to go ahead and answer you there. We can at least try it today and see what it does. Those of you who are on YouTube might have to tell me if it's, I'm sorry, not YouTube, well, I guess all of you are here, but especially those on Facebook. If somebody calls in through there, hey, how you doing, Brother Cole? I see you switch over. How you doing, Sister Michelle? Shalom to you all, and early Shabbat Shalom to everybody. How you doing, Sister Ruth? Oh, you have hypothyroidism? Yeah, so it's beneath the level it needs to be in, and things systemically are out of place. Yeah. So we can try, if you'd like to try and call in through Messenger. Oh, it's giving me some weird thing. And that's okay. I think it should work. So if somebody would like to call in to ask, once again, same thing as if you're even on the chat, same rules apply. We're asking for you to be respectful, asking to make sure that whatever you do is done in a respectful manner, and make sure that you recognize that if it's not done, the moderators, or really if you're calling it, it'll be myself personally, we might have to let you go. Am I? Alrighty. But Tada, thank you everybody so far. I know I haven't gotten to all the questions. I'm trying. It's my pleasure. Can somebody remind me where we are on these questions? I know I've left. Or any other questions, comments, and concerns? You said it's purified water. Purified is supposed to be better depending on the brand. I guess I'd have to look at the brand and what it says, because legally and lawfully there's certain things that if it says it, they have to do stuff. They still might only do it at a very low level, but they have to at least do certain things. One of the things that I've been doing with water, or what I got to get back to with water, haven't done it in a while, but I'm planning on doing. I've been waiting for it to actually, as crazy as it sounds, I've been waiting on it to snow again. As much craziness as out here in the snow, I might be able to get to some clean pockets of snow that's been sitting around in some of the places around here, and try it too. You can take like a big copper vessel of some sort, and you can take all this stuff in copper, and you can place it inside the copper vessel. You can place water or snow. Snow is actually really great because it's really pure, coming from the sky, even with all the stuff that's crazy in it. Some places, they actually create snow. Unfortunately, like, it's wild. They're creating rainstorms and snow and all this stuff. But anyways, and I'm not talking about just off the ground. I'm talking about people that are literally flying over and making stuff rain and snow, or putting chemicals in the air. It's wild. So you have to be careful of some of that. But for the most part, at least nowadays, who knows what it'll be in a few years, most of us are not dealing with anything like that, right? So if you're dealing with water, you can actually catch it. And even with some of that, you can still catch it in like a big copper vessel of some kind and let it just sit there for 24 hours. Make sure it's covered after you catch it, but then let it sit for like 24 hours covered. Anything you drink out of there is going to be purified, right? That's one of the best ways to clean. You can do something similar, I believe, with iron. Once again, this is for spiritual educational purposes only, and this is allegedly on top of that, right? But you could do something like that. I'm not sure so much about bronze cleansing, the cleansing effects of bronze. It has a little bit of cleansing effect, but copper especially is a great way. So if you can catch stuff, or even if you're somebody who does, like, I know some places we have to make sure we say this. Some places it is illegal to catch water that falls from the sky. Um, but if you're in a place, right, where you're allowed to catch water falling from the sky, um, it is yeah, and I'm sorry, I missed what Brother Jacob said earlier. Make sure you re-add minerals too as much as you can. By the way, for those of you who are dealing with land and stuff like that, and even us, make sure that once the snow clears and everything, that you re-add minerals, especially if you have, like, we have some spaces where the stuff is on a hill, right? Some of the land is hilly. That means that when the snow melts and everything goes away, nutrients go away too. So you have to, we have to till the land, right? You said aren't heavy metals in rainwater? There can be some. There can be some, but once again, if you put a copper, by the way, your body can take metal. I'm not saying your body can't take metal, right? But your body has a balance of stuff. And by the way, if you have proper magnesium levels and things of that nature, you're not going to necessarily, like, your body knows how to cleanse itself, right? But we're getting things through a lot of different means and a lot of different food, or so-called food, and even a lot of stuff that touches our bodies. Like a lot of the clothes we're wearing are plastic, right? So if you're wearing plastic, you're eating, your body's eating. If you're putting on deodorant and all the metals and stuff that are coming through there, through your underarms to a specific place, right? Like, your body's eating. Some of you sisters, unfortunately, you have to, well, you're a woman, your body's created to do what it does. Unfortunately, there's all this stuff that doesn't have cotton or stuff to breathe that you guys have to put on, for pads, tampons, things of that nature, right? So your body's not breathing, things of that nature, and you're getting a lot of plastic and even metal sometimes that go in through there, very sensitive spot, right? A lot of you, when you're using toilet tissue, you're using toilet tissue that comes with a lot of metals and poison and stuff like that shouldn't be in there, and you're putting it in a place that's very invasive and absorbs stuff, so yeah, so we if we eat more properly and we do certain things and we make sure we're paying attention to that, your body's going to flush things. Even that's why your body throws up. Your body knows, oh, something's in here, I shouldn't be having it. Get rid of it, right? Like, your body understands digestion, and even part of the digestion and part of the reason why your stomach acid is the way it is, and your gallbladder is the way it is, and your liver is the way it is, and your pancreas is the way that it is, your kidneys are the way that they are, because they deal with vile stuff. It's trying to get rid of the stuff that shouldn't belong. So the goal is to get your cells and your organs to be able to be at a certain position to where they can have those things, right? So yeah, so you can have, and how you doing, Swazi? You can have different things that are in there, right? You can have all these different things that are around, so to speak, but you got to be careful about, you know, be careful about the intake, how you intake it, and ultimately, even the fasting, like we're saying, once in a while, even if it's not a 40-day fast, even if it's every once in a while, I'm going to fast, I'm not going to eat for 2-3 days, every once in a while, or I'm not going to eat for 36 hours. You'd be surprised if you can become somebody that just once a week or once every other week says, I'm not going to eat for 36 hours, right? Try to take a long sleep or take a couple long naps in there if you can, right? But try to let your body heal and recover and not have anything go inside for 36 hours. You'd be surprised, what your body can do and how it can heal itself and how it can get rid of certain things. And even, stuff that will start coming out of your eyes when you wake up, and your ears and your nose and your mouth. Some of you guys, have things that are coming out there, stuff like that, like your body's crying, for help. Sometimes we think this stuff is just because we get older, or it's just hereditary thing. If your mama and your daddy and your grandmama and your granddaddy and your great grandpappy and your great grandmammy, you know, we're doing or eating bad stuff and not having, and you're not giving, and we're never trained to give your body opportunities for healing, you know, things of that nature, then guess what? You're going to have some issues. Yeah, even dry skin, even a sign, by the way, of stuff, you know, you guys have ever done the elasticity stuff, right? Like your skin should bounce back, right? If it doesn't bounce back, if you pull on it and it just stays out for a little bit, stays like it's spongy, you know, like a sponge that's, well, I don't know if spongy is the right thing, but you know what I'm saying? If it like, instead of snapping back, you pull it and it's like, it goes back slow, sign that you're unhealthy, sign that you're dehydrated as well. You know, if you have what person just called pimples or acne or stuff like that. Now, I'm oversimplifying a little bit. Once again, I'm not playing a doctor on television. This is for educational, spiritual purposes only, and this is allegedly true, right? But if you deal with, or you had some breakthroughs as a tincture every rise and praise, yeah, you know. But also too, you know, some of the stuff that's going on, like when you see pimples, we just go, oh yeah, teenagers, and when they get to be teenagers, it's just natural for them to have acne. But no, it's not. Right? Usually teenagers are not eating correctly, right? And usually teenagers are having a bunch of stuff in their body. And as a child, you done all this stuff, but now with certain things that are moving different in their bodies, it tells on you. So now, yeah, it's gonna be right there. Boom. Like, by the way, your child has had pimples and stuff before too, right? But you ain't think about it in the same level. But now that they get a bunch of them, it's because of certain things that are happening as the transition and hormones are moving, but it's telling on them more. And you'd be surprised, sometimes those things that are pimples that we just think are pimples, sometimes there are parasites there. Sometimes it's waste. You know, a lot of times that's waste. Yes, there can be stuff that's coming on the skin and all that stuff, and it's causing a chemical reaction that causes this to do this, or underneath the hair follicle, there's this that causes blah, blah. Yeah, but sometimes there is waste, and your body needs to get rid of it, right? Sometimes you're like, why do I have a random whatever on my chest? Sorry if that's TMI, but I've had that happen to me before. It was in my late teens, and I was like, yeah, right. And of course, I'm one of those dudes that, you know, is invasive. I can never let something just stay and heal, especially at that time. So I was trying to get it out, which made it worse and worse, right? But some of that stuff is waste. It's something that is trying to get rid of. What you said the least in the kingdom scripture about following the law and teaching others has always confused you. But you would like to know if I can explain it, how not following the law, you can still make it into the kingdom and be the least. Okay, so great question. So a lot of persons take that, and that's based off of Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20. If you're right, and the one you're focusing on is verse 19 and verse 20. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 is where it says, do not think that where Yeshua is speaking, he says, do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I came not to destroy the law, but I came that it might be put into effect, or what we say, fulfilled. Right? Oh, I hear you. Amen. Amen. Then you have praise Yah for you being 71 years younger too. All praises. So Ephesians. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. It says, Christ says, think not that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I came not to destroy the law, but that it might be fulfilled. Matthew chapter 5, verse 18 comes behind that and says, until heaven and earth pass away. We just went over that in SOC University last night. You guys recall, right? Why these characters are so important. Right, we should not change one jot or tittle, which breaks down to we should not change the most minuscule of measurements, because every character has a number attached, so therefore you'll mess up the numerology. And also we should not change the yavad or the yod or the way that it is written, right, because you will cause them to come into question. Right, then Ephesians 5:19. Sorry, I keep saying Ephesians because we're talking about marriage earlier. Sorry, Matthew chapter 5, verse 19 then says, Matthew 5:19 says, those who teach others, right, to follow or not to follow the law and do not follow the law themselves are considered to be the least in the kingdom. But those that teach others to follow the law and follow the law are considered to be the greatest in the kingdom. And then it tells us in Matthew 5:20, you should know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. So there's a couple things that can be confusing about this, besides the fact that many of our brothers and sisters out here teach this incorrectly. There's many different teachings that are bad, but I'm going to bring us back. As you guys know, we're going to come to culture and we're going to come to context, right? We're going to go to culture, we're going to go to context. So contextually, what is the purpose of the Sermon on the Mount? This is our sweet spot, right? We use Sermon on the Mount quite a bit. But what is the purpose of our Sermon on the Mount? What is the purpose of the Sermon on the Mount? You ever thought about that? It's not just nice. It's not just powerful. It's not just beautiful. It's not just to try. It's not just the first. By the way, it's not the first sermon of Christ. But it's not. It's not just for that, right? But what is the purpose? Because if we recognize the purpose, we'll see the context of what's going on. Because the purpose of the Sermon on the Mount is a lot different than what you and I think it is. So the purpose of the Sermon on the Mount, right? Any guesses, by the way? I'm only asking us to do this because I want us to think differently. And I know it's about to be 11 a.m. New York time. Remember, this is a Q&A day. We go longer on our Q&A days by about 30 minutes. So if you have to tune out at 11 a.m. New York time, thank you. Barak, thank you. May he bless you and your family. Barak, right? Or Baruch. But we're gonna sit on this for a little bit. So why is it, right? And this is a great question. We might end up taking the next 30 minutes on this question, Sister Michelle. Great question, right? Not saying anything bad, I'm saying great question. But just real quick, just think about this. I want you to think about it. What is the purpose of the Sermon on the Mount? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Oh, you can look him up on TikTok. His brother Jacob. If you text me, I can send it to you as well. But I don't know if you're able to come over to TikTok real quick. He's on right now under jacobs.com. If you're able to come into the chat, maybe if you even just ask, he's a businessman, but he'll probably set aside some time. Right, great friend. He'll set aside some time probably for you just real quick. If you come over, he's on here as jacobslink.com. And you just befriend him and stuff like that. Probably reach out to him too. He's got some great stuff that can help. There you go. So he's saying click here if you come over. But he's on TikTok whenever you get a chance. JACOBSLINK.com. And there's a space between the dot and the com. But jacobslink.com. That's what I was talking about earlier. He's got some great stuff. We actually gave out some books. He came for Feast of Tabernacles and gave us a whole thing. I don't know if I have your book upstairs, sir. I think I got it downstairs. And yeah, I think I got it downstairs. Maybe we'll show it. Maybe if I can recall, I'll try to bring it up for next time so we can show it to everybody. But yeah, he has a great book. He brought it up. We actually gave it to quite a few persons who were with us for Feast of Tabernacles. And he's got some great information and has some great products. And even has some suggestions on things that you should look for when you're buying food or growing it, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, but you followed, yeah, great. So, but where are we at? Sorry, Sister Michelle asked a question about the scripture. Okay, yeah. So Matthew chapter 5 through 7 is not the only place in scripture, obviously, but Matthew chapter 5 through 7 is where we are with that particular thought process, and we're talking about the Sermon on the Mount. Right? Talking about the Sermon on the Mount. And so, Matthew chapter 5 through 7 is the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5 is where we see this particular sermon. For those of you who are told this is the first sermon, this can't be the first sermon because after Christ in Matthew chapter 4 is baptized, right? And then he goes into the wilderness and uses the scripture against the Satan, if you don't want to call it a sermon, fine. It says he begins to go and preach to those in Galilee and those of different cultures and those of different nations, not just only Israelites. In Matthew chapter 4, before then, he begins to preach to all those who are following him still, and then some others at the Mount of Olives in Matthew chapter 5. All right. And Matthew chapter 5 through 7 is what we call the Sermon on the Mount. This is the longest version of it. And so this is the one that kind of we usually use the most. It's not the only place where you find the Sermon on the Mount. Like Luke chapter 6 is the Sermon on the Mount, etc. There's other places. But Matthew chapter 5 is where we normally get most of our stuff from it because it's the longest version of it that's written out. It's the longest memory of it. not one of the 12. And in these things that are given out in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 20 are where these scriptures come from. Now, you have to recognize that his goal is to make sure that he reintroduces and really is reaffirming, right? Is reaffirming the actual kingdom, not from the law of the flesh, but the law of the spirit. That's his responsibility with giving the sermon. That's what he's doing here. He starts off in Matthew chapter 5, verse 3, in what we call the Beatitudes. His first one, where he says Barak, is what? Barak, Barak are the poor in Ravak, in the poor in spirit, because the kingdom of heaven belongs to them. And this is crucial for them. This is like an eye-opening thing to start off with from the jump. Why? Because if you're saying that, the religious leaders of the day have said that if you don't have as much money as them, you're not Barak. The religious leaders have taught if you're not of the family that they're part of, you're not Barak. Mm-hmm. Right? The religious leaders of the day, how you doing, Sister Casey? The religious leaders of the day have said if you're not what we say you should be, you're not Barak. Matter of fact, a lot of persons don't recognize that back then they didn't even believe, right, that there was an afterlife like that. Some of them were starting to get away from was there an afterlife at all. This is one of the reasons why they say you blaspheme if you're the Messiah, because some of them didn't even believe that you could be one and the same with the Father, because they didn't even believe there was a heaven. Some of that still exists, by the way. That's why you got to be careful with some of these persons who are out there. When they say certain buzzwords, you gotta pay attention, even if they be our own brethren. We got to pay attention, right? So, Barak are those who are poor in spirit. In other words, you don't even know what's going on in the spirit, but the kingdom of heaven still can be yours. This is an amazing thing for them to hear, because they've been told why they have to be excluded. And for the first time, the door has come in and said, I have opened doors that no man shut, and shut doors that no man can open. You are allowed to come in here. And at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, after he finishes about talking about the wise man, the person who listens to him is as the wise man who built his house upon the rock. But the person who does not listen to him is as the foolish man who built his house upon the sand. The people's response, the nation's response, those who listened to him, their response was, wow, he talks as one who has authority and not as the scribes and the Pharisees. In other words, these scribes and Pharisees, they have zero authority. They are not authorized. They've been speaking to us on things, and we realize now, listening to somebody who actually has authority, the word wrapped in flesh, he speaks properly about the kingdom. We've never had anybody tell us about the kingdom properly, because he speaks not just passionately, but he speaks properly. Once again, he speaks not just passionately, he speaks properly. He speaks in an authoritative fashion. There is no he's speaking to somebody who he has connection with it. He's saying things in a manner where he's able to get us to look at the law. He was able to teach us who the religious leaders keep us away from truth. He was able to show us in Matthew 5 and 7 more than what they have been telling us our entire lives. He was able to tell us that the law still matters. And he was able to tell us if we do what the prophets say, and anybody, including the scribes and the Pharisees, tell us we're wrong for doing what the prophets say, that we should rejoice and be exceeding glad. That's part of the Beatitudes. As long as they're lying on you and not telling truths about you, but if you are doing what the word says and they're coming at you because you do what the word says, rejoice and be exceeding glad. He's teaching them things, right, that they have never had these religious leaders teach them. He had authority. So this is one of the things that we have to recognize. He's bringing back the kingdom. They had the law, but it was the law of sin. He's bringing back the law of the spirit. He's bringing back the kingdom. You can have the words and not live the word. You can have the words of the word, but not know who the word is. Come on, Holy Spirit. That's a bar right there. You can have the words of the word and still not have a relationship with the word. Many persons have word. They can tell you the Bible says this. I heard somebody the other day, and they were correct about it. I don't know if it was on my Facebook feed or my or YouTube feeds or whatever. But somebody came on there, it was short, I think, and it was a sister on there, and she was up there, and she was making the point to say, yeah, a lot of these persons that you talk about and they say that they're atheists, you have to recognize that these atheists, they're atheists because they read the Bible. That's not necessarily so. That's an overstatement, right? That being said, though, she's right in this sense that you can't make the assumption that somebody doesn't believe in the Bible because they haven't read it. But here's my deal. I would ask her, okay, well, what is the first word of the Bible? Y'all know what that is, right? Right? I would ask her, hey, what's the first word of the Bible? And most persons would get it wrong. Or maybe she would get it right in a certain extent. Then I'd say, okay, what is the Bible? What's the first scroll of the Bible actually called? That's right. That's why Yahashua says, there are those who've done things, but get away from me, you workers of iniquity. I never knew you. See, the word, Paul tells us, and when the law showed up, when the word showed up, in Romans chapter 9, verses 32 and 33, right before he says, it's my prayer that Israel might be saved, he said Israel had a problem when the word showed up, because when the word showed up, oh, my greatness. Come on, Holy Spirit. When the word showed up, it said that the word, Yahashua himself, was a stumbling stone of offense to us because we didn't know the law. See, we had the law, but we did not know the law. Remember, we talked about marriage earlier. To know, to be intimate with something to the point of identifying. A lot of us had the law, but we did not know the law. And since we did not know the law, how could you notice when the Messiah showed up? Salah. Hmm. See, a lot of persons have the law. They have a copy of this, but they do not know who this is. You see the difference? A lot of persons will tell you how they'll say, I know the Bible. Matter of fact, I have a family member and they hate whenever they really don't like me. You know, it is what it is. They haven't liked me since we was little, right? Since we were younger, they haven't liked me. That being said, you know, whenever it's time to pray, right? Persons know I'm a pastor, so they'll say, "Well, why don't you pray?" And they'll be like, and they'll always find some reason to be, somebody else should pray. That. And one of the things that this person told me a long time ago, and I don't even talking about the Bible, but they know what I stand for. So they made it a point to say, "You can never tell me anything about the Bible. You can never tell me anything about the Bible or anything about the Word." That's what they made a point to say. You can never tell me anything about the Bible. You can never tell me anything about the word. I was raised in blah, blah. And I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, yeah, you sound like somebody that was raised in the church. Right? You sound like somebody who was raised in the church, who has had a Bible, that was forced to open up their Bible, has tried their best to make sure as they got in their teenage years, try to get up out there, and you had no clue. Oh, you can't tell me nothing about the Bible. Yeah, I can. Right? But you don't want to hear it because you don't want to hear the authority, and that's fine. But you got to recognize a lot of persons they've never heard authorized version of the word. They just heard something somebody tells them, something that gets them to put something in the collection plate, something that gets people to show up under them, something that gets them to be in a building, something that gets them to be in a building that's right across the street from the liquor store that's still there 50 years later. But they haven't found something that changes life, and they don't know the word for themselves. They don't know Christ for themselves. They don't know who he is. They don't care about who he is. They don't care about what he looks like. They don't care about what he wants you to look like, what he wants your countenance to appear as. They don't care. They don't care about nationality. They don't care about putting him before who you vote for and all this stuff or whatever, because you shouldn't vote more than you obey your king. They don't care about obedience being better than sacrifice. They don't know the word. So this is what Christ is doing here when he's preaching the Sermon on the Mount. He's reestablished. He even talks about what? Be careful about the fact, make sure that you judge the way you want to be judged, condemn the way you want to be condemned, forgive the way in the manner you want to be forgiven. For whatever you give, it shall be given unto thee. And right after that, then comes back and says what? Says, and stop worrying about the chaff that's in your brother or sister's eye when you got a whole beam in your eye. And after that says, hey, stop worrying about casting pearls before swine, because it's not for them. You trying to get persons who are talking bad about you to see how you are. They could be pigs out here. And you sitting up there trying to get dirty and be in the pig pen. No, you don't need to be in the pig pen. Be clean. Be righteous. Be inside the home. Be clean. Stay away from that. Because these pigs will gore you while you busy trying to make sure that you give them something that they don't see the value in. This is the point of it. So when you go back now to Matthew chapter 5, verse 19, He's not saying those in the kingdom. A lot of persons teach it as those who are in the kingdom who teach others to disobey the law are considered to be the least. No, no, no. What he's saying is the standard for those who are in the kingdom, right? Right? As far as the kingdom standards, as far as the kingdoms, when it judges folk, if you teach persons to disobey the law and you don't follow the law for yourself, as far as the kingdom is concerned, you are the least. In other words, you are the one. See, watch this. How do we start off? Those of you who are poor in spirit, the kingdom belongs to you. If you're poor in spirit and you learn the law and you teach others to live by the law, guess what? You were considered to be great. And all these persons that are telling you to be lawless out here and say that you're nothing unless you do what they do, they in the kingdom standards are the least. That doesn't mean that they're in the kingdom. It's talking about the standard. It's saying that as far as when we're in the kingdom, if you give me something to be lawless, right, then kingdom standard says you are not great at all. If you follow the law and you teach me how to follow it, you are considered to be great in the kingdom, right? It's not saying that the person who does not follow the law is therefore in the kingdom. It's saying if somebody comes to you and I and says that they are kingdom, but they cannot follow law, as far as our standards, they can't be kingdom. It's not saying the least in the kingdom. That's not what it says. It says they are the least. So what we've been taught, and it's 11:11, babe, right? In case you didn't see. So those who are in the kingdom, right? Hold on 1 second, y'all. It's 11:11. For those who are in the kingdom, those that are in the kingdom, those that are in the kingdom, when we see somebody say, be lawless, be this, be that, guess what? Guess what? We say, oh, okay, that person, is not who they say they are. They can't be somebody who follows Christ. They can't be somebody we should be under. We should not look up to them. They're the least. How you doing, Tony? Thanks for being on. Right? And thank you for sharing the live, everybody. Appreciate you. Thank you for the shares, likes, subscribes, notifications, hitting all those things. So we have this issue that's popped up where we follow the least. You see, Christ is coming to reestablish kingdom and reestablish order. And we're following the least. We're following persons that will not obey, that will not follow law. Right? Now, I'm not saying once again that we serve or worship the law. We talked about that in Galatians before. We don't worship the law. Right? Unless we talk about worshiping Christ. Christ himself is the law, is the word. So if we're under the law, we're under Christ. Right? But the context that Paul is trying to get across, which usually is taken out of context, is that, hey, we're not following the law because we were saved by the law. We follow the law because the one who saved us followed it. And the one who says, carry your cross the way that he carried it, that's how he carried his cross. That's what he carried to the cross. That's what he had on the cross. Have you ever thought about that Christ himself carried the law to the cross? Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered that Christ carried that law to the cross? Right? He was the law wrapped in flesh. He dwelt amongst us. And when he showed up, we could not see him for who he was because we had gone into a perverted version of the law of the word. So yes, if somebody's talking about a perverted version of the law, a perverted version of the word, we don't follow. And we don't think that it's by works alone. We know that faith and works go together. So faith without works has no life, and works without faith has no life. But in the kingdom, it's not so much, oh, these persons are still in the kingdom, but they cannot obey the law. That's not what it says. It says the standard from within the kingdom is that they don't obey the law. Then if you keep going after that, so that's Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 20, you'll see Christ starts talking about Matthew 5, 21 through 26, forgiveness, and if you have disputes, and following the law. Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 through 32. Talking about marriage and fornication and adultery and following the law. Right? You go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 33 through pretty much the end of chapter 5. Let yea be yea and nay be nay. Follow the law. Be perfect in Be perfect as your Father in heaven also is perfect. You can't be perfect within yourself, so how can you be perfect like your Father in heaven is perfect? That's when you follow the law, right? When you fall short, you repent so you can get back on track to doing what? Following the law. Matthew chapter 6, right? Verses 1 through, Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 8, talking about, hey, the law of sin and the law of the Spirit. Here we go again. We have this issue going on where there are persons who are praying a certain way but live in a certain way, or give a certain amount but don't really give truly what they're supposed to, right? And do what they're supposed to do with it, right? So what are we talking about? Following the law. How do we give shalach? How do we give petition? How do we give prayer to the Most High lawfully? Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13, really add on verses 14 and 15. Hey, how do we make sure that we focus on things lawfully and allow the Spirit to be able to move upon us? Well, seek ye first the kingdom of Elohim. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33 and 34. Seek ye first the kingdom of Elohim and all his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto thee. And give no thought for tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of the things concerning itself, sufficient to the evil thereof. How do we make sure that we deal with things lawfully? Matthew chapter 7, verse 1 and 2. Whatever you give shall be given unto thee. So be careful how you judge. Be careful how you condemn. Be careful how you don't forgive or you do forgive, right? For it comes back to you. Hey, stop worrying about everybody else if you can't make sure that you take care of what things are supposed to be yourself. Here you are using the Bible to tell everybody about themselves, but you can't do these things for yourself. Matthew, right? We just went through that, right? Matthew chapter 7, verse 6, not casting pearl before swine. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, do unto others as you want done unto you. For this is the law and the prophets. You got to deal with the law and the prophets that we even talked about in Matthew 5, 10 through 12, and Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20. Now, Matthew 7, 12 tells us you got to make sure you deal with the law and the prophets. And if you listen to those words, you will be wise and build your house upon a strong foundation, which is the law. But for those who do not listen to what Christ said and do not listen to it, you shall be like the one who built his house upon the sand. And when the rains come in, you will have those things washed away. Therefore, like Matthew 5:19 says, according to kingdom standards, those who think that they're building their stuff on a strong foundation, but will have their houses washed away, right? Their families even washed away, their belief systems washed away, their churches washed away, some of their camps washed away, whatever the case might be. It's because you built your house upon the sand. The word sand, by the way, is a compound word, if you will. It is the word sea and land put together, in between the sea and the land. But in between the sea and the land, right, the sand gets covered up by sea. It was always sea. It was unstable. You should never build a foundation upon water, right? You don't build a foundation on water. You build boats on water, and you build them so that they be able to move and to float. But they don't have strong foundation, right? They have strong keels, right? They have a foundation in that sense, but they don't have a foundation tied to the earth. Why? Because you'd have to build it underwater. But somebody who is not aware that they could be in confusion builds their house on the sand, not on the land, not in the sea, but in the sand, in between the sea and the land. And they think in their mind, because it's, hey, this is property, nobody's even out here, nobody even building anything out here. We could be on the sand all day, man. It's gonna be beautiful. Forgetting that there's a tide that comes in. So now you built something, and the tide, the water, the vicissitudes of life have now rushed in, and because you built your foundation upon that, right? It wasn't strong. It wasn't law. And you told everybody that they didn't have to build their foundation upon solid ground. So now, here comes the flood, and you messed over. Here comes the flood, and you don't have a place to stay. Here comes the flood, and unfortunately, hopefully this doesn't happen, but some lose their lives. Here comes the flood in the spirit, and now in the spirit, some of you will experience the second death. You didn't have to if you built your foundation upon the law, upon the word, upon the rock, upon the true law. That's what he came to do. So when he's talking about that in Matthew chapter 5 through 7 in the Sermon on the Mount, and specifically Matthew chapter 5, verse 19, the goal is to make sure that you build your foundation upon the law. Those who teach those to do that and live by that are considered to be the greatest, right? Those who teach others not to do that and consider it, right, and don't do it themselves are considered to be the least. How you doing, Tomsky? And thanks for being on. Glad you're here, right? So that's what it's really talking about there in Matthew chapter 5, verse 19. So it's not saying, because I've heard a person say that before, and they'll be like, oh, well, I get it, but that's in the kingdom. No. It's not saying literally these persons are in the kingdom and they don't have to follow the law, because then what's the point? That's not what it's saying. It's saying in the kingdom, when we look at greatness and we look at leastness, if you will, right? Those who are the greatest, right, live by the law. Those who are the least do not. And then he says something right after that, which is astounding. This is why they said in Matthew chapter 7 at the end, he speaks as one who has authority. Because he says right after that, he says, you need to know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees, which means that he's saying just because you have a position, just because you're a scribe, you write it out, just because you're a Pharisee, you a leader or got whatever official title as a priest you have, you need to know it better than them, because what he's saying specifically in that context is that the religious leaders of these days, of that day, and let's be honest, some of them of today, they don't know this word. They don't live by it. They don't what? Know it. They're not married to it. They have it, but they're not married to it, or they have even, and because they don't go to our Father who art in heaven for it, they have various sources they go, they have bastardized it. In other words, it has no source, it has no father, it has no Abba, right? So since there is no source or father they go to, or if they're going to the Father, it can't be Christ, it's Antichrist, therefore they are of their father, the devil, which Christ also has said when he was on the earth realm, right? And we should be at enmity with them, because they're the children of the devil. We're told that in Genesis chapter 3, Balashat Gamon. Amen. So we have to be aware of those things. Amen. Amen. All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? They don't have to be real quick, because it's about time. We do go longer on Thursdays and Fridays, every other Thursday and Friday when we do Q&A. That being said, our time is just about up. If there be nothing else, I will not keep you all. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I tried my best to catch as many as possible. I feel like we answered just about every single one, but there's always one I might have missed. Prayerfully, if you guys came on later or had to leave early, whatever the case might be, you can always go back and watch the recordings of these. So since I do not see anything popping up, moderators, feel free to check me. Y'all feel free to check me if I missed somewhere. Right. So, but thank you all. I appreciate you all. Oh, Epsom salt. I missed that comment earlier. Epsom salt helps to do those things. Yeah. So, Epsom salt, if you want to put your body in there, that's a process that your body may or may not want to go through while you're in the midst of like 30, 40-day fasting, but it definitely helps. You probably could, actually. You probably could. But I thank you guys for your being on today. I thank you for your confidence, your commitment, for you being confidants with your covenant. That's the goal, and to allowing him, to be your confidant. Prayerfully, I've been able to give some confidant energy that helped you today and helped you maybe be able to learn some things and grow through some things. So here are the announcements real quick, and we're going to go ahead and get ready to do our shout out. If you've never done a shout out with us before, you can just stay here on TikTok, or you come from our other platforms that are going at this moment and join us for that. We appreciate you once again, and thank you for your time, talent, effort, energy, and yes, even those who give donations that help us to be able to run what we're doing, even with money around the world. We appreciate you so much. We cannot do this without the help of persons such as yourself, and we acknowledge you, and we take time out to do that. Announcements for the rest of the day: 7 p.m. New York time will be the women's meeting. 8 p.m. New York time will be #Real Talk live session. 9 p.m. New York time, SOC University Sovereignty. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. New York time, we'll get right back into, we still are in the series technically, but we'll get right back into Revelation. We'll start at Revelation chapter 8 and verse 1. Then we'll have our Shabbat service on the podcast at 10 a.m. New York time. 11 a.m. New York time, we'll have Shabbat school for the babies. 12:15 p.m. New York time, we'll have the watch party where we continue to do Reclaiming the Throne. Let's see. 2 p.m. New York time, we will have SOC International Meeting / #SOC University course. And then, and that one will make sure that everybody can actually see. So if, before it goes on to Patreon, so feel free to check in that. Also, by the way, Patreon members, we posted quite a bit of stuff. We've been putting a lot of stuff up there, so please check that out as well when you get a chance. And what else are we doing? I'm sorry. Oh yeah, and men's meeting tomorrow night, 7 p.m. New York time, 9 p.m. New York time. Tomorrow night will be SOC University, where we'll be learning about we'll be doing natural medicine. All right. So we thank you all. We appreciate you. We honor you. We look forward to talking with you guys again soon. Thank you for being on with us, whether you joined us from the podcast, came over from IG, came over from Clapper, or with us now on Clapper, or with us on Facebook, or with us on YouTube, or with us on TikTok. If you tried to get in touch with us on WhatsApp, we're trying to figure out how to get these calls coming in. They just might not, maybe it's not for us in this season. But if you feel free, you can be on Amen. We belong. So we'll be on very soon for you guys. But I thank you all. I very much so appreciate you. We're going to get ready to do our shout out once again. So if you want to come over to TikTok, or if you want to just stay on, and when the music begins to play, we'll give you instruction on how the shout out works. But I thank you all again. I very much so appreciate your presence. And thank you for allowing me an opportunity, allowing myself, allowing SOC, allowing my family, allowing the Most High into your lives and into your hearts. And we don't take it lightly that you would allow us to participate in your life in some way, shape, or form. And I do not take it lightly that the Most High would allow me virtual space or a space of any kind to be able to give his word. So we thank you all. We appreciate you again. We're going to get ready to do our close here. We once again give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to him for my wife, the Honorable who lives a life that is able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, biologist by degree. Much love and respect to all of you. I thank you so much. We honor you, and we look forward to talking to you next time. And I will see you again. And remember that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, early Shabbat Shalom, if I don't see you before tomorrow. Talk to you soon. And the calendars will start being put out by me. Hopefully, they'll be sent out either tomorrow or Monday, basically, probably depending on the pricing.